And you are seeing my shit again. Okay. I'm gonna set this up like this. I don't like that. You need to get away from there. Thank you. Okay, you can be over there. Well, that still sucks. I still don't like it. You come over here. Put that down. Okay, hi. 1 million hits on 45 chapters, baby. Hell yeah. Sam, Sam, you missed me singing one last time, even though not a lot of people seem to care. But you know what? I don't care. I'm gonna do me, you know? Um, I'd rather be me. I'd rather be me. So yeah, this is Two's Company, chapter 45, epilogue, one last time. And it's a time skip. It's a time skip. My damn internet was being dumb. Dang. Hello. Yeah, it must come to an end. Every good thing must come to an end, or else it's not special anymore. The best storytellers know this. So yeah, this is Two's Company, chapter 45, epilogue. Happy 1 year Two's Company anniversary, because of course this chapter came out on the anniversary, but I was not able to do it then. But yeah, and song of choice, obviously, one last time. Everyone is required to do like karaoke to One Last Time from Hamilton before reading this chapter, obviously, or else it doesn't count because I said so. Oh my god, hey, hello. Awesome. Okay, let's start this. 9 years later, the studio lights dimmed slightly as the opening music faded beneath the applause. On the large screen behind the stage, the title of the show shimmered in elegant white lettering. Between the lines with Su Min. Su Min sat comfortably in one of the two cream-colored chairs at center stage, cue cards resting neatly in her lap, her smile warm as she turned toward the camera. "Welcome back," she said, voice smooth and practiced. "I'm your host, Su Min, and today we have a very special guest joining us." The audience quieted, the anticipation settling over the room. And this is Rumi, we already know. She's an author who, despite her own best efforts to stay in her little bubble, has made quite a name for herself over the years. Her work is intimate, heartbreaking, tender, and deeply human. She's written several acclaimed queer novels, many of which have found a home in the hearts of readers across the world. A soft murmur moved through the audience. But recently, one of her first memoirs, All Because of Lavender, has found renewed attention after several details surrounding the events in the book were brought to light. It is a story about grief, family, survival, love, and the devastating truth behind a tragedy that shaped her life. Sumin paused, letting the weight of that settle for just a beat. Then her smile returned, gentle but bright. "Everyone, please welcome Rumi Pak." They are taking Zoe's last name. Wait. Hi, Reef. Last chapter of Two's Company. Dang. The applause swelled immediately. Rumi stepped out from behind the curtain, and for a second, the noise seemed to hit her all at once. She gave a small, shy wave as she walked onto the stage, her smile soft and a little bashful, like some part of her still couldn't believe an entire room had just stood up for her. The camera followed her as she crossed beneath the lights, catching the faint, nervous laugh that slipped past her lips when the cheers grew louder. Her long hair was braided down her back, a few delicate strands framing her face, and the lights caught on the gold threaded through her jewelry. She wore a lilac blouse beneath a tailored cream blazer, the fabric soft and fluid against the clean lines of her matching slacks. Fine gold embroidery traced along the cuffs and lapels in the subtle vine-like patterns, catching the light only when she moved. A thin gold necklace rested at her throat, a small pendant tucked just above her collarbone. Matching earrings brushed beneath her hair, and on her fingers, two rings gleamed warmly as she lifted her hand to wave again. Sumin stood to greet her with open arms, and Rumi stepped into the hug without hesitation, though her cheeks colored slightly when the audience awed at the exchange. I'm so glad you could join us, Sumin said as she pulled back, still holding both of Rumi's hands for a second. Rumi smiled, a little shy under the attention. I'm glad to be here. Sumin's smile warmed. You look absolutely lovely today, she said, gesturing to Rumi's outfit. I have to say, this look is stunning. Rumi glanced down at herself as if she had somehow forgotten what she was wearing, and the audience laughed softly when she let out a quiet, embarrassed chuckle. Thank you, she said. You look lovely as well. Do you mind if I ask where it's from? Rumi's fingers brushed briefly over the edge of her blazer, smoothing the fabric in a gesture that looked more fond than nervous. Yes, this is Sever, she said. It's a rising brand my wife co owns with one of her close friends. This piece was custom made. Suman's brows lifted. Your wife made this for you? Rumi's smile changed instantly, soft, private, glowing at the edges. Yes, she did. The audience reacted immediately, a wave of affectionate noise moving through the room, and Suman leaned back in her chair slightly, looking Rumi over again with renewed appreciation. I love when a story is like, yeah, we're gonna have like the happiest ending imaginable. Everyone loves them. Everyone, my wife. Everyone's accepting of queer people. Everyone is like, oh my god, this is so cute. I love it. I love it. um, Looking Rumi over again with renewed appreciation. Well, she did one hell of a job, she said, and the audience laughed. It's gorgeous. The color, the cut, the gold detailing, everything. Rumi looked down again, her thumb running unconsciously over one of her rings. She's very good at what she does, she said, pride unmistakably in her voice. Sumin motioned toward the chairs, and they both sat, Rumi crossing one leg over the other as she settled in. Her hands folded neatly in her lap, fingers interlacing to stop herself from fidgeting. Even after all these years, she still seemed to have it. Then Suman smiled mischievously. Would you be willing to put in a good word for me? Because I would love a custom piece of my own. Rumi laughed, and the sound loosened something in the room. I can, she said, still smiling. But she's probably watching right now, so. Oh! Suman immediately turned toward the camera, lifting a hand in dramatic wave. Hello, Rumi's wife. First of all, excellent work. Second, I would love a custom piece whenever your schedule allows. The audience laughed, and Rumi covered her mouth briefly, shoulders shaking. Sumin turned back to her. How was that? Rumi pretended to consider it. Good, she said. Respectful, direct. She might consider it. Might? She's selective. Understandable. Artists usually are. Rumi smiled, her hands settling again in her lap. Suman reached toward the small table between them and picked up the book resting there. The camera followed the movement, zooming in as she held it up for the audience to see. The cover was a deep, bruised shade of purple, almost black around the edges, fading inward into a softer lavender haze. At the center, a sprig of lavender lay pressed beneath what looked like cracked glass, its delicate purple buds beautiful at first glance, but slightly darkened at the tips, like something once sweet had begun to rot. Thin gold lines ran through the cracks, not hiding the damage, but tracing it carefully, making the breaks impossible to ignore. Near the bottom, almost hidden in the shadow of the lavender stem, was the faint outline of two hands reaching for each other without quite touching. The title sat across the center in clean white lettering, all because of lavender. Rumi looked at it, and for a moment, her expression changed dramatically. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. But something quiet passed through her face as the cover appeared on the screen behind them, large enough for the entire studio to see. Her thumb brushed once over her ring, slow and unconscious. Sumin glanced from the book to Rumi. So, this book, she began, is your first memoir. You released it 4 years ago, but recently it has suddenly found a much wider audience. People are talking about it everywhere now. How does that feel? All this attention arriving so late, especially for something so personal. Rumi nodded slowly, taking in the question before answering. Well, she let out a soft, nervous laugh. It's a little nerve wracking, honestly. The audience stayed quiet, listening. When I wrote this, I didn't go into it the way I usually go into my books, she continued. With my novels, of course, I care about how they do. I care about readers finding them, connecting with them, loving the characters. But with this memoir, I wasn't thinking about success. I wasn't thinking about numbers or attention or whether it would become something people talked about. She paused, eyes flicking briefly toward the book in Sumin's hands. I just needed to write it. Sumin nodded, her expression softening. And like you said, it came out 4 years ago, Rumi added. So I think part of me assumed that whatever response it was going to get had already happened. I didn't expect it to come back like this. I didn't expect people to suddenly be reading it all at once, or reaching out, or caring so deeply. Her mouth curved faintly, but there was something fragile in it. It's overwhelming, she said, but I'm grateful. Sumin lowered the book slightly in her lap, still keeping the cover visible. That's understandable, she said. And this was a major change of pace for you. Before this, readers mostly knew you for your queer novels, especially books like Bound by the Tide and The Shape of Us, stories about love, loyalty, found family, healing. Rumi smiled at the mention, a little bashful. Thank you. But this, Suman said, lifting the memoir slightly, is different. It's intimate in a much more direct way. It deals with grief, family, corruption, medical negligence, and the truth behind your mother's death. What made you decide to write it? Rumi's posture shifted slightly. This book was actually Two's Company all along. Actually, Two's Company is all because of Lavender. It's the same. Rumi's posture shifted slightly. She straightened, not in a stiff way, but like she was gathering herself before stepping carefully into something heavier. Her fingers interlaced in her lap, the rings on her hand catching the studio light. For a long time, I didn't think I would, she admitted. The studio went still. I didn't think, I didn't really know how to talk about it without feeling like I was pulling my own life apart in front of people. But around that time, my Umma was working tirelessly with the detectives, lawyers, journalists, anyone who would listen. She was trying to make sure the truth didn't stay buried. Sumin's eyes softened at the word. She was trying to get the story out because the Hyo family had so much influence. They had money, connections, media control. For years, they were able to shape the narrative or make parts of it disappear completely. And I think I reached a point where I couldn't just sit there and watch her carry that alone. She looked down for a second, breathing in. I'm a writer, Rumi said. That's the one thing I knew how to do. So I thought if I could write it clearly enough, honestly enough, maybe I could help. Maybe I could put everything in one place where people couldn't look away from it. Sumin nodded thoughtfully. But by the time you finished it, everything was already resolved, Rumi finished softly. Legally, at least. The word legally carried a weight of its own, and Rumi's hand tightened slightly in her lap. The investigation had moved forward. The evidence was out. The people responsible were finally being held accountable. So the purpose of the book changed while I was writing it. She glanced toward the cover again. At first, I thought I was writing it to expose something, to help prove something, to bring the truth to light because I was afraid no one would believe us otherwise. Her voice stayed steady, but the emotion beneath it deepened. Then, after everything happened, I realized I was also writing it because I needed somewhere to put the truth after carrying it for so long. I needed it outside of me. I needed my mother to be remembered as more than what happened to her. I needed people to understand that this wasn't just a tragedy or a headline. It was a life. It was a family. It was years of silence that should never have been allowed to happen. The audience was silent now. Rumi swallowed, then gave a small, honest smile. So even though the case had already been resolved by the time the book was finished, I still wanted to release it, not as evidence anymore, but as testimony, as grief, as love, as a way of saying, this happened and we are still here. Sumin held her gaze for a moment, visibly moved. Then she looked down at the book in her hands. And when you say resolved, she said carefully, you mean. Rumi nodded once. They're behind bars as we speak. Yes, she said. Thankfully. The audience reacted quietly, not with applause exactly, but with a low emotional murmur. Sumin nodded, giving that answer room before moving on. I can tell how much time, thought, and care. I can tell how much time, thought, and care went into the book, she said. And the cover itself is beautiful, but also very unsettling once you understand the story. Was it meant to represent something specific? Rumi accepted the book when Sumin handed it to her. For a moment, she held it in both hands, looking down at the cover with an expression that was difficult to name. Pride, maybe? Grief, too. Something healed over, but still tender beneath the surface. Yes, she said, very much. She lifted the book slightly, turning it so the audience could see it again. I spent a lot of time workshopping it with my other wife. She illustrates all of my book covers, and she's always been very good at understanding what I mean even when I don't explain it well. Suman smiled. That sounds like a useful skill. It is, Rumi said, a little fondly, especially with me. A soft laugh moved through the audience. Rumi looked back at the cover. We knew we wanted lavender to be central, obviously, but we didn't want it to look peaceful. Lavender is usually associated with calm, with comfort, with sleep. It's pretty, it's soft. People see it and they think of something soothing. Her thumb traced lightly along the edge of the book. But in my life, lavender became something else. It became the beginning of everything we lost. So we wanted the cover to hold both truths, the beauty of it and the danger, the way something can look harmless and still destroy an entire family. Sumin's expression sobered. And the cracked glass? She asked. Rumi looked at the gold lines running through the design. That was my wife's idea, she said softly. The cracks are the damage. The gold is not exactly healing, not in the sense that everything becomes fine again, more like repair, like proof that something broke and was still cared for afterward. She paused, and the hands at the bottom are for my mother and me. Sumin glanced down, noticing them again. They are not touching, she said. Rumi nodded. No, they can't. The answer was quiet, but it landed heavily. Rumi's eyes stayed on the cover, but they're still reaching. For a moment, even Sumin didn't speak. Then Rumi gave a small breath, almost a laugh, though her eyes looked bright. So, yes, this was the final product. She held the book carefully in her lap, both hands resting over it now. My wife likes to say it's one of the hardest covers she's ever made for me, Rumi added. Not technically, emotionally. I can imagine. Rumi smiled faintly. she cried while sketching it. The audience softened. Then Rumi's smile softened, becoming something private and affectionate, and then got mad when I noticed. Sumin laughed gently, seemingly grateful for the brief moment of lightness after the weight of everything they had been discussing. While we are on the topic, Sumin began, her gaze shifting toward the book resting between them. I want to ask you if she trailed off, gesturing toward the cover. Chapter break. Good day, good day. Hello, Austin. Hello, hello. Toss, I don't know if you'll read this, but I just want to thank you for writing such a beautiful fic. Yeah. Yeah, this is Two's company, but they want a crowd. Aww. Austin, I hope you're not like under a car again. Oh, I really found a lot of happiness here. Aww. Life behind bars is the least they deserve. Casually flexing the double wise. I mean, I think she was already flexing with the like 2 rings. Ugh. No, I'm not an attractor now. Good. Hi, Score. Hello. We are reading Two's Company today. Hello. Hi, Rex. Rex in the YouTube. Rumi parked the car outside the studio and sat there for a second, hands still resting on the steering wheel. The morning had been long, long enough that the idea of going straight home sounded tempting. But another thought had won. Zoe was here. That was enough. Rumi climbed out of the car, locking it behind her before making her way toward the familiar building. The California sun hung comfortably overhead, warming the pavement beneath her feet, and as she pushed open the front door, the familiar scent of paint, wood, and fresh coffee greeted her almost immediately. Home in another way. Hey, Rumi looked toward the reception desk. Rumi looked toward the reception desk. Mystery looked up from his laptop, offering one of those small, easy smiles that had never quite left him, even after all these years. At first glance, he hadn't changed much, but that wasn't entirely true. His hair, for one, was different. The long bangs that used to curtain most of his face were gone, replaced with something neatly styled back, exposing features Rumi was still convinced strangers probably stopped him to compliment. His eyes had always been beautiful, almost unfairly so, framed by lashes that were ridiculously long, the kind that made him look less like a person and more like something carefully illustrated. She'd asked him about it once, years ago, why he used to hide them. His answer had been one of the strangest she'd ever heard. People complimented them too much when I was younger, he said. And then I watched looks that kill, and I thought that was going to happen, so hiding them felt safer. I liked the look, so I just kept it. Rumi had laughed for nearly 5 minutes. Mystery hadn't even cracked a smile. Then one day, after a few years back, he'd shown up with his hair pushed back, just like this. When she'd asked why, he'd only shrugged. Felt childish now that I'm a man. She'd laughed at that too. Hi, Mist. His smile warmed, subtle but noticeable. I love that Mystery is just like working at their home, just chilling. Like, hell yeah. Friends. Oh, shit. Hello. His smile warmed, subtle but noticeable. Rumi tilted her head down the hallway. She's back there? He nodded once, then, after a brief pause, lifted both thumbs with an amused look that very clearly said, Good luck getting her to stop working. Rumi smiled to herself. Thanks. She moved down the hallway, her footsteps naturally quiet against the polished floor. The further she went, the more the building softened into sound, voices layering over each other, light and alive, children laughing, the soft tap of paintbrushes against glass jars. And then Zoe. And then, Zoe said brightly, her voice carrying just enough to reach her, you want to make one big green circle. Rumi slowed without thinking as she neared the doorway. Because dragons have very big bellies. A ripple of giggles followed. Rumi leaned lightly against the frame, unnoticed. The room opened up in front of her, filled with tiny easels arranged in a loose semicircle around Zoe. Each one was occupied by a child in some stage of artistic chaos, paint smeared across hands, sleeves, cheeks. One little girl had somehow gotten blue paint all the way up to her elbow. Another had a streak of green across his nose. And Zoe, somehow, had paint on both cheeks. Rumi smiled, the expression coming easily, instinctively. Some things never changed. Zoe stood in front of them, a paintbrush in one hand as she demonstrated an exaggerated circle across the canvas. Like this. She dragged the brush in the biggest, most dramatic circle imaginable. So big that your dragon looks like he ate. She paused, pretending to think. 3 refrigerators! Uh, I don't know if this is you referencing that, but girl. Zoe being an art teacher does feel right. Oh, 3 refrigerators. High toss. I'm shaking my head. Fridge tricks. I love Zoe so much. Welcome back, Fridge Tricks. Fridge Tricks never die. The room burst into laughter. No! One little boy squealed. That's too many refrigerators! You're right, Zoe gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Maybe only 2. That earned even louder laughter, the sound spilling over itself as the children eagerly turned back to their canvases, each dragon somehow becoming rounder than the last. Rumi watched quietly. Zoe had changed over the years, though not in any of the ways that truly mattered. She was still bright, still expressive, still someone who spoke with her entire body and laughed with her head tipped back. She still managed to get paint on herself before it ever reached the canvas. But time had settled into her gently, softening the edges of what had once been a restless, almost frantic energy in her 20s. It had shifted into something steadier, more certain. She still bounced when she got excited. She just didn't bounce quite as high. A patterned scarf was wrapped around her head today, her dark hair falling freely down her back. The space buns only appeared now on nostalgic days, usually followed by complaints about how much effort they took. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes now, laugh lines. Rumi adored them, every single one. They felt like proof of a life spent smiling, proof that happiness had stayed. When Zoe wasn't in the studio creating another painting that would somehow end in galleries, despite her constant insistence that she was just messing around, she spent a few afternoons each week teaching children's classes like this. She always claimed the kids inspired her. Rumi had a quiet suspicion it went both ways. Zoe crouched beside one little girl, gently steadying her hand around the paintbrush. There you go, she murmured, her voice softening. See? You're already making him adorable. The little girl beamed. Then Zoe looked up. Their eyes met across the room, and for a moment, everything else seemed to fall away. Her entire face softened, her smile shifting, not the bright, animated one she'd been giving the children, but something quieter, warmer, like a piece of her settling into place. She set her paintbrush down without a second thought. Okay, she said, clapping her hands together once. Keep giving your dragons big bellies. Miss Hannah's going to come help if anyone needs anything. Another instructor glanced up from the opposite side of the room and gave Zoe an amused nod, already used to this. Zoe was moving before the moment even fully settled, crossing the room without hesitation. Toward the doorway, toward Rumi, toward home. She only stopped once she was close enough for Rumi to catch the tiny flecks of yellow paint dusting the edge of her scarf. Hi, Zoe said softly. Just one word, and yet, even after all these years, Rumi could still hear everything inside it. You're here. I missed you. I'm happy to see you. Rumi smiled, lifting a hand to cup Zoe's cheek as she leaned in to kiss her. It was gentle and unhurried, the kind of kiss shaped by years of knowing exactly how the other person fit, where to pause, how to stay. When they pulled apart, Zoe rested her forehead lightly against hers, lingering there for a moment. Hi, Rumi murmured in return. Zoe's smile softened. Tired? Rumi let out a dramatic sigh. So tired. A quiet laugh slipped from Zoe. I can tell. She brushed her thumb beneath Rumi's eye, a small, familiar gesture, before leaning in to steal one more quick kiss. Give me 15 minutes? Rumi nodded without hesitation. I'll wait. I know you will. Zoe's smile lingered for a second longer before she turned back toward the classroom. She'd only made it halfway when she paused suddenly. Oh! She spun back around, eyes bright. I love you. Rumi felt her smile widen without meaning to. I love you too. Satisfied, Zoe turned again and hurried back to her tiny artists. Rumi stayed where she was, leaning lightly against the doorway as she watched Zoe pick up her paintbrush again, slipping back into the rhythm of the room like she'd never left it. Okay, Zoe announced, clapping her hands once to gather their attention. Whose dragon accidentally became a dinosaur? Nearly every hand shot into the air. Rumi laughed quietly to herself, the sound soft and fond. Some things really never changed. Very sweet. I'm like confused if that's like her, like if she has a little school or if like she's giving these classes at their home, because at first I was like, oh, is mystery at their home? Maybe not though. It's outside the studio. Yeah, I just got confused. I was like, my brain was like, oh, she came home. No, it was a studio. That was my bad. I was like, what is Miss doing at the home art studio? Yeah, mystery being like, I'm assuming being her receptionist or something is very funny. Exactly. My heart is gonna explode. Hi, Weef. Fridge Tricks Revival 2026. Was Fridge Tricks 2025? It was. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Two things I use: the golden thing, the Absinius dragons. You cannot escape dragon references. Jesus. Listen, Fridge Tricks does live in my heart, but it had its moment. It had its like week, and then it died. But you know, like it had a week. Fridge Tricks was 3 chaotic hours of my life. Exactly. And you know what? That's all that matters. That's all that it had to be. Yeah. Rumi decided to make one more stop before heading home. She was already out, and she might as well see her other wife. The boutique was exactly as busy as she'd expected. The moment she stepped inside, she was met with the familiar whirlwind of movement that somehow always seemed to orbit Mira's brand. Assistants hurried from room to room with garment bags slung over their shoulders, bolts of fabric passing by in careful arms. Somewhere deeper in the building, sewing machines hummed steadily beneath the constant stream of conversations about deadlines, measurements, fittings, and shipping schedules. It was organized chaos, somehow. Rumi still wasn't entirely convinced anyone besides Mira actually understood how it all worked. Afternoon, Rumi. She glanced toward the reception desk, smiling. Hi, Sam. Sam barely looked up from her computer before pointing toward the back hallway. She's in, figured. You know the way. Rumi thanked her and made her way through the controlled chaos, somehow carefully sidestepping someone carrying what looked like half a wedding dress before finally reaching the familiar office door. She knocked once out of habit, then pushed it open. Someone nearly walked straight into her. Oh! Abby stumbled back a step before breaking into a grin. Hey, Rumi. Hi. Bye, Rumi. Before she could respond, he'd already slipped around her and disappeared down the hallway. Rumi blinked after him. Everyone seems to be in a rush here. A quiet hum answered her. She looked toward the office. Mira was standing behind her desk, slipping her glasses off and setting them beside an intimidating stack of sketches and paperwork. And, God, Rumi's heart did a small flip. Even now, after all these years, it did that. Mira wore a crisp white button-up with the sleeves rolled neatly to her forearms, tucked into charcoal slacks that somehow managed to look impossibly elegant on her, despite the measuring tape draped lazily around her neck. A slim gold watch rested against her wrist, catching the afternoon light that filtered in through the office windows. Her hair was longer now than it had been years ago, pulled back into a low ponytail that had begun to loosen over the course of the day. A few strands had slipped free near her temples, softening features that might have once seemed intimidating to anyone who didn't know her. There were small changes, too, details only Rumi seemed to notice. Fine lines at the corners of her eyes, shaped by years of smiling more than she ever used to, and the faint silver strands beginning to appear near her ears, which Mira stubbornly refused to dye, no matter what every magazine insisted. The tiny scar on one finger from the rotary cutter she'd argued was completely avoidable in hindsight. She was beautiful, not despite time, because of it. Ruby honestly wasn't sure she'd ever stop falling in love with her. Yeah, Mira said with a tired sigh, folding her arms. We've got a lot of custom orders waiting to be finished, so your little host friend has to wait. She nodded toward the hallway Abby had disappeared down. Rumi laughed. He looked terrified. He should be. You worked him too hard? I gave him a deadline. Which means yes. Mira's mouth twitched, with a hint of smile she never quite bothered to hide anymore. Rumi crossed the room without hesitation and wrapped her arms around Mira's waist, settling into her like it was the most natural thing in the world, like breathing. Mira relaxed into her immediately, one arm coming around Rumi while the other found the small of her back. Long day? Mira asked quietly. Mm-hmm. You look tired. I am. Mira pressed a slow kiss to her forehead, lingering just a second before tilting her chin up and kissing her properly. It was unhurried, familiar, the kind of kiss that stayed just long enough to make Rumi smile into it. You watched? Rumi asked softly when they pulled apart. Mira looked at her as if the question itself was absurd. Of course. Rumi's smile widened. You texted me 3 separate paragraphs. I had thoughts. You had live commentary. It was important commentary. You paused the interview to tell me my posture was getting worse. It was. Rumi rolled her eyes, the affection in it impossible to miss. Listen, I need a girlfriend to tell me that my posture is getting worse. Like, I need that. Rumi rolled her eyes, the affection in it impossible to miss. I've missed that. You've been gone since 8 this morning. It felt longer. Mira's expression softened without hesitation. It did. For a moment, they didn't say anything else. They simply stood there, holding each other in the quiet pocket of Mira's office, while everything beyond it carried on in a rush neither of them needed to join. Eventually, Rumi spoke again. I saw Zoe not too long ago. Mira hummed in acknowledgement. She was teaching today. I figured. She asked if you could fix her favorite sweater. Mira sighed before Rumi had even finished. The cats? The cats. I can fix it. I knew you'd say that. I've repaired that sweater 3 times. Fourth time's the charm. It won't be if they keep treating knitwear like prey. Rumi giggled softly, and Mira glanced down at her, clearly unable to stop herself from smiling too. You know, Mira started. What? I really like when you stop by. Rumi felt something in her chest soften at that. I know you're busy. I am. So I don't want to interrupt. You don't. Mira lifted a hand, brushing a loose strand of hair back behind Rumi's ear, her touch gentle and absent minded in a way that came from habit. You remind me to stop. Stop? She nodded toward the mountain of paperwork waiting on her desk. I would have kept working for another 3 hours. You would have forgotten lunch, too. I remembered lunch at 4:30. It still counts. Rumi smiled knowingly. No, it doesn't. Mira leaned down until their foreheads rested together, her voice quieter now. No, she admitted. It doesn't. Rumi reached up, gently smoothing the collar of Mira's shirt where it had folded awkwardly, her fingers careful and precise. There. Mira glanced down briefly. You fixed me. I fixed your collar. You always fix me. Rumi looked up, caught slightly off guard. The words had been quiet, almost absent minded, delivered so matter of factly it didn't seem like Mira had fully realized how much they would land. She leaned in again, closing the small space between them and kissing her slowly, like she needed a second longer to say something she couldn't quite put into words. You fix me too, she whispered when she pulled back, her voice soft against Mira's lips. Mira smiled into it, completely at ease. I know. Somewhere outside the office, a voice cut across the workroom, calling Abby's name. A beat later came his equally loud reply. I'm coming. Mira let out a quiet sigh, the sound more fond than frustrated. Duty calls. Rumi laughed under her breath. I'll let you get back to saving fashion. She had barely started to pull away when Mira caught her wrist, stopping her just enough to keep her close. Dinner later? Rumi's gaze dropped briefly to where Mira's hand had slipped into hers, her wedding ring catching the light. Even now, after all these years, it still made something warm settle in her chest. Yeah, she said softly. Mira's expression softened in that quiet, certain way that never needed anything more. I can't wait. Water break, water break. What are y'all saying? I need a polytrix fourth wing AU. I haven't read fourth wing. I have been so bad in my book reading game. Yeah. I'm sure Ray created another account to serve She's Chronically Online. I haven't checked it. I haven't checked her account out in a while. Dang. Girl, listen to it free on YouTube. Oh, someone put the audiobook on YouTube. This is going to sound crazy. I'm actually not super huge on audiobooks, even though I would love to narrate some. I really love the act of reading. There's a fan-made audiobook. Makes sense. Rayami has to have seen most of the biggest fanfics, which is terrifying. Damn, I still wish that Ray saw the Fridge Tricks fanfics. That would have been so fun. I was literally like, if she's gonna see anything, I feel like these would be the best things for her to see. Oh, somebody please fix me, girl. Same. Can I please be someone's third a la Rumi 2's company? Pleek. That's fair. It entirely depends on who's reading the audiobooks for me. That too, I guess, because some some narrators' voices just like, this is gonna sound so mean. It just like does not mesh with me. Like I tried to this is gonna sound funny. I tried. I was like, let me listen to the Heated Rivalry audiobook for shits and giggles. Try listening to it, and I was immediately like, no, I don't like the narrator's voice. I'm so sorry. Um Ray asked why she was a mini fridge. Yeah, she did. No, Ray knew about fridge tricks, but I don't know if she read the fridge tricks fanfics. I think that would be funny. To be honest, I should read the other fridge tricks fanfics because there is some fridge smut over there, which I think is funny as hell. Let's keep going. Whew. Rumi slipped off her shoes as she steps inside, nudging the front door shut behind her with a quiet click. A small sigh escaped her as the weight of the day settled off her shoulders. She was definitely ready for a nap. The house greeted her with comfortable silence. Warm California sunlight spilled through the floor to ceiling windows, stretching across the hardwood floors in long golden rectangles. Somewhere outside, she could hear a distant lawnmower and children laughing down the street. The sound softened by the closed windows until they became part of the house's familiar afternoon soundtrack. She smiled to herself. Quiet. She'd grown to appreciate quiet. Rumi's eyes drifted toward the wall near the entrance. The largest painting in the house hung there. A sprawling landscape portrait of the three of them overlooking the California coastline, painted in Zoe's unmistakable style. Rich blues melted into warm golds. Flowers seemed almost alive beneath the brushstrokes. And in the foreground, the three of them sat shoulder to shoulder, laughing at something that only existed inside Zoe's memory. Mira had one arm draped over Rumi's shoulders. Zoe's head rested comfortably against Mira's. It wasn't perfectly realistic. Zoe never painted realistically. She painted feelings instead. And somehow, looking at it always made Rumi feel like she was coming home. She smiled softly before continuing farther inside. Dang. Floor to ceiling windows, California house. Like, dang, they are rich, rich. A familiar trill echoed down the hallway. Then came the rapid patter of little paws. Two cats darted around the corner almost simultaneously. Nim, Rumi laughed immediately, crouching down. Dang, Nim's still alive? Period. I don't know how many years this is in the future. It's been 4 years since she wrote the book, and I'm assuming she wrote it not too long after she graduated, because when she graduated, the crime investigation was still going on. Oh yeah, they have a lot of money. The crime investigation was still going on, so I'm like assuming they're like still in their late 20s. Didn't it say 9 years? It did. I'm stupid. Sam, I'm stupid. It did say 9 years. It did say 9 years. I would sometimes I read some small things and like I read it and then it poof disappears. Poof disappears. It did say 9 years. So they're like 30. 30, 31. Okay. 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 The second cat approached with considerably more dignity. Well, as much dignity as a cat could have. Ropo padded over at an unhurried pace, white and brown tail held high as if she hadn't secretly sprinted the last half of the hallway. And hello to you too. Girl, I have ADHD. Like it's really bad. I forget things really easily anyway. So like, and hello to you too. Rumi smiled, rubbing behind his ears. You're such a sweetheart. Ropo immediately leaned harder into the affection. Yes, you are. When they'd first moved to California, Mira had worried endlessly that Nim would become lonely while everyone worked during the day. So naturally, she'd solved the problem by bringing home another cat, Ropo, troposphere. I mean, it makes sense. Cumulonimbus, troposphere. Because apparently Mira had decided years ago that every living thing in their household needed to be named after the weather. Thank you, Mira. Rumi still remembered asking why. Mira had simply answered, "It's thematic. Cumulonimbus clouds form in the troposphere." Such a nerd. And to everyone's surprise, including Mira's, Nim and Ropo had become inseparable within a week, which had been adorable until tiny squeaky meows interrupted her thoughts. Rumi looked down just in time to see four wobbly kittens stumbling out after their parents. Apparently too inseparable, she murmured. One tiny white and brown kitten immediately toddled toward her with all the confidence of something that hadn't yet figured out how walking worked. Halfway there, she tripped over absolutely nothing. Rumi's heart melted. Oh, sweetheart. She scooped the kitten into her hands. Pora, short for evaporation. Mira is the most unserious person in the world. The kitten blinked up at her with enormous blue eyes before immediately attempting to chew on one of her fingers. A sharp little prick against her pant leg made Rumi glance downward. Another kitten had begun scaling her slacks with impressive determination. Danny, short for condensation. And the four kittens are named after the water cycle, I'm guessing. This is crazy. She carefully peeled the little gray kitten with white spots sprinkled across her back from her leg before the tiny claws could climb any higher. You're getting so much better at that. Denny meowed proudly. Across the floor, a near perfect miniature version of Nim sat watching everyone with suspiciously serious eyes. Ion, short for transpiration, like transpiration, like Eon, Ion, Eon, Ion. Little does Artie know. Toss, you're probably the only person who would name fictional animals after the stages of the water cycle. You're so funny. He looked so much like Nim that even now Rumi occasionally had to do a double take. The last kitten simply sat in the middle of the hallway, meowing dramatically at absolutely nobody. Yes, yes, Rumi laughed. I see you too, Perk. Zoe called him that because Pressy, short for precipitation, was just Perk scrambled around with an added letter. Together, they made up the entire water cycle. When Zoe had proudly explained that to Stacy over a video call, her mother had laughed so hard she'd nearly fallen off her chair. Rumi still thought about that sometimes. She set Pora gently back onto the floor. Sorry, I can't take this seriously at all. This is so silly. So silly. She set Pora gently back onto the floor. Immediately, all four kittens began following her in an uneven, waddling parade. She looked behind her. Four tiny tails, two adult cats supervising from a respectable distance. I'm being herded. Nim blinked. Ropo chirped. Rumi laughed under her breath. Carefully stepping over the tiny bodies weaving around her feet, she started toward the staircase. The house wasn't enormous, not like those sprawling celebrity homes people imagined when they heard successful author or fashion designer or artist. It was simply theirs. I mean, you have floor to ceiling windows, Rumi. What is your like rubric here? What is your rubric? What do you think a fancy apartment looks like? Oh, it's not fancy. It just has floor to ceiling windows, girl. Like, please. It was simply theirs. Comfortable, warm, bookshelves overflowing because she'd run out of room years ago. Paintings covering nearly every wall because Zoe couldn't stop creating. fabric swatches, sketchbooks, and half finished designs somehow appearing in every room because Mira insisted inspiration could strike anywhere. There were scratches on the baseboards from kittens, coffee rings on the dining table that nobody had ever bothered sanding out, a tiny pencil mark hidden beside the pantry where Zoe had once measured all of their heights for science. The apartment in Seoul would always hold a piece of her heart. Her first home with them, the place where she had fallen in love, the place where she learned she could be loved back. But this was the home they had chosen together, built together, filled together. Rumi rested a hand lightly against the staircase railing as she climbed toward the second floor, listening to the tiny paws following after her. Her lips curved into a smile. Somehow, somewhere, between all the impossible things they'd survived, they had made it here. And the next part is 5 years ago. So 4 years from the ending of Two's Company. Cool, cool, cool. I'm just gonna put something down. Ilna goes following. Did you hear their freaking names? My shitty apartment in Arkansas has floor to ceiling windows. Really? Really? That's crazy. That's crazy. How is that a thing? That's wild. No, I did not. You didn't hear their names? The little kittens are named after the stages of the water cycle, Reef. Like Toss has a crazy brain that I would love to just like dig around in. They are literally named after transpiration, evaporation, precipitation, and wait, what was the transpiration? I am not joking. because their cat is named Nim, as in cumulonimbus, and they get another cat named after the troposphere, named wait, I'm already forgetting. Um 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 wait, Ropo, right? Hello. Yeah, Ropo. And their kittens are named after the water cycle. No, my internet, it's going. It's so silly. Ion. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's the evaporation one. It's so funny. It's so funny. Like I can't get over how funny that is. Like that is just like I said, only Toss can do something like that. And I'll be like, you know what? Sure. You know what? Sure. No, no. Okay, 5 years ago. So, Rumi whispered, what do we do? Her voice was strange in the quiet room, too small for what had just happened. She lay on her back, one arm bent over her face, fingers pressed lightly against her eyes as if that could stop the tears from coming back. Her cheeks still felt warm. Her chest still ached from how hard she had cried after they said yes, after Zoe had practically thrown herself into her arms, after Mira had gone quiet in that terrifying way that meant she was feeling too much to know what to do with it. The room still felt charged from it. Their breathing had finally evened out, but not completely. Every few seconds, one of them shifted or sniffed or let out a small laugh like the reality of it kept hitting all over again. Rumi's hand lowered from her face. The ceiling above them was blurred slightly by the tears still clinging to her lashes. She had proposed. They had said yes. She waited 5 years to propose after buying the rings. Listen, you gotta applaud the patience, I guess. The rings were still on their fingers, and yet, now that the first overwhelming wave had settled, another truth had begun pressing into the room. a colder one. The covers shifted beside her, and Rumi turned her head. Zoe was lying on her side, facing her, eyes still red rimmed and glassy. Her hand was tucked close to her chest, fingers curled in just enough that the ring caught the low bedroom light whenever she moved. She looked like she had been trying to stop smiling for the past 10 minutes and failing every time. Rumi's heart twisted. Then she glanced past her. Mira was quiet on Rumi's other side, sitting slightly upright against the pillows, her gaze fixed on the ring now resting on her finger. She hadn't taken her eyes off it for a while. Every so often, her thumb brushed over it, slow and disbelieving, like she still needed to confirm it was real. What do you mean? Zoe murmured. Rumi swallowed. She rolled onto her stomach so she could face them properly, folding her arms beneath her chin. Her eyes moved between them, and suddenly the words felt stupid, like maybe she was ruining the moment by bringing it up too soon. But if she didn't say it now, she knew it would keep sitting inside her, growing teeth. About the whole marriage thing, she said quietly. Zoe's smile softened, then faltered. Rumi looked down at the sheets, picking at a tiny wrinkle in the fabric. You know we can't hear. The silence that followed was gentle but heavy. Ah, not surprised. That was the worst part. Sigh. None of them reacted like Rumi had said something new. They already knew. Of course they knew. They had known long before tonight, probably from the first time one of them had joked too lightly about marrying each other and then gone quiet for half a second too long. It was one of those things they had all managed not to touch directly because touching it meant admitting the shape of their love was real enough to run into walls. Zoe hummed, but there was no humor in it. Her brows drew together slightly, and her gaze dropped to the ring on her own finger. Yeah, she whispered. Rumi hated that one word. She hated how resigned it sounded. Mira finally spoke. Do you want a wedding? Rumi blinked. She looked over at her. Mira's voice was calm, but her expression wasn't. Her eyes were fixed on Rumi now, dark and intent, like the answer mattered so much she was afraid to blink through it. Rumi's face warmed immediately. A wedding. The word opened something painfully soft inside her. She hadn't let herself imagine it too clearly before. Not because she didn't want it, but because wanting it felt dangerous. Wanting a wedding meant wanting the dress, the vows, the first dance, the flowers, the tears, the ridiculous speeches, the pictures they would keep forever. Wanting a wedding meant wanting to stand in front of everyone they loved and say, these are mine, and I am theirs, and this is real. Rumi looked up at the sheets again. Her voice was quiet when she answered. Yeah. The word trembled at the edge as she forced herself to look up, glancing between them. Do you want one too? Zoe's answer came immediately. She laughed softly, though her eyes filled again as she smiled. Yeah, she said. Of course I do. Rumi's throat tightened. Mira didn't answer right away. She looked back down at her ring, thumb passing over the band once, twice. Her mouth pressed together like she was trying to keep something from breaking through. Then she nodded slowly. Yeah, she said, barely above a whisper. For a moment, that was enough. Just the three of them in a bed, all wanting the same impossible thing. Then Mira inhaled carefully, and Rumi knew before she said anything that she was about to be practical. Not because she wanted to ruin it, but because Mira could never stop herself from walking toward the hard part first if she thought it might hurt them later. But polyamorous people can't get married, Mira said quietly. Damn, girl. So we're still in the real world. Zoe's eyes flicked shut for a second. Rumi nodded, her fingers curling into the sheet. I know. Mira looked between them, voice low and careful. We can have a ceremony, we can exchange vows, we can call each other wives, and we could mean it. But legally, she swallowed, her gaze dropping again. That was Mira, I'm so sorry. Legally, not all three of us could marry each other. It would only be two of us. One person would be left out. Rumi felt the words settle heavily in her stomach. Left out. That was the part none of them wanted to say. Because it wasn't just paperwork, even if it should have been. It wasn't just a certificate. It wasn't just a legal technicality they could wave away with enough sentiment. It would mean hospitals, taxes, housing, insurance. Damn, why are why are you bringing up real life to me? Please, I just wanted to read. I just want to read my girls being happy. Why, girl? Why? Emergency decisions, rights the world only handed to relationships it recognized as simple enough to understand. This is fanfic. Why real life? I'm saying two names on paper, not three. Zoe pushed herself up slightly on one elbow, her expression sharpening with quiet frustration. I mean, technically, it doesn't change what we are, she said. If we have a ceremony and exchange vows, then we're married. We would all know it. Our family would know it. Who cares what some government form says? Mira gave her a look. Zoe sighed. I know it matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. She rubbed at her face with her free hand, then looked at them again. I just mean, I don't want the law to be the thing that decides how seriously we take this. Rumi's chest softened at that. Zoe's voice wavered slightly as she kept going. We can build around it, right? We can put all our names on the house if we buy one. We can do wills and medical paperwork and accounts and all that boring adult stuff that Mira probably already has spreadsheet for. Mira looked away. Zoe stared at her. You have a spreadsheet already? No. Mira, it's not complete. Despite herself, Rumi let out a tiny, wet laugh. Mira's mouth twitched, but it disappeared quickly. Zoe reached for her hand, threading their fingers together carefully around the ring. We can make it as fair as we can, Zoe said softly. It won't be perfect, but we can try. Mira stared at their joined hands. I know, she murmured. I just don't like that we have to try to make unfairness hurt less. That landed quietly. Rumi's eyes burned. Yeah, she whispered. I don't like it either. The room fell silent again. The proposal should have been pure happiness. It had been for a while, overwhelmingly so, but now the happiness had something bitter threaded through it. Not enough to poison it, but enough that Rumi could taste it when she breathed. Mira's fingers tightened around Zoe's. Even if we did go with it, she said, who would. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Rumi's eyes moved between them. The thought had already been there, quiet and terrible. Who would legally marry? Who would get the paper? Who would have the right? The others didn't. It felt impossible to answer without hurting someone. If Rumi married Zoe, Mira would be left out. If Rumi married Mira, Zoe would be left out. If Zoe and Mira married each other, Rumi would be left out. The options sat there like a cruel little triangle. Rumi opened her mouth, then closed it. Mira's jaw tightened. Zoe looked at both of them. Then her expression changed, softened, settled into something so gentle that Rumi's stomach twisted before Zoe even spoke. Why not you two? Zoe murmured. Mira's head snapped up. Rumi stared at her. What? Rumi breathed. Zoe's smile was small but steady. You and Mira. Mira sat up straighter immediately. Zoe. No, listen. I don't think that's fair to you. How wouldn't it be fair to me? Zoe asked, and there was no sharpness in her voice, only a quiet kind of certainty. If we're all getting married, we're all getting married. Mira shook her head, already distressed. That is not the same thing, and you know it. Zoe's mouth trembled faintly, but she kept her voice even. I know the paper wouldn't have my name on it. Exactly. But the vows would, Zoe said. The rings would. The ceremony would. Our home would. Our life would. Mira's lips parted, but nothing came out. Zoe shifted closer to them, her hand still holding Mira's. If one pair has to do the legal part, then I want it to be you two. Rumi's throat tightened. This is so upsetting. Zoe. Zoe looked at her then, eyes wet again, but bright. Rumi, you have spent so much of your life being unsure if you're allowed to stay anywhere, she said softly. And Mira spent so much of hers trying to prove she didn't need anyone. I know a piece of paper won't fix that. I know it won't magically make everything safe forever. She laughed weakly, wiping at her cheek. But if someone has to have that legal tie, if someone has to be protected first by the part of the world that only understands two names at a time, I want it to be you and Mira. Mira looked wrecked. Her face had gone still, but her eyes were shining in a way that made Rumi's chest hurt. That's not fair to you, she whispered. Zoe squeezed her hand. I'm not being left out. You would be. No, Zoe said, firmer now. I wouldn't. Mira looked down. Zoe leaned closer, ducking her head until Mira had to see. I'm not some extra person standing outside the marriage while you two go inside. I'm in this bed. I'm wearing this ring. I'm going to stand there with both of you and say my vows to both of you, and both of you are going to say yours to me. I'm going to cry so hard my makeup gives up. I'm going to dance with my wives. I'm going to go home with my wives. I'm going to wake up the next morning with my wives. Her voice broke slightly. So don't tell me I'm not married just because the house doesn't know how to count to three. Rumi made a small sound and covered her mouth. Mira closed her eyes, tears slipping down her face. Zoe reached for Rumi's hand too, pulling her into the circle of them. And maybe it hurts, Zoe admitted. Okay, maybe it does. Maybe some part of me will hate that the paper isn't mine too, but I don't want that hurt to become bigger than us. Rumi's tears finally spilled over. Zoe looked between them, still smiling through her own. I want us, she whispered. However we have to do it. I want us more than I want everything to be perfect. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mira lowered her head, pressing Zoe's knuckles to her lips. Her voice came out rough. You are too good. Zoe let out a watery laugh. I'm actually very annoying. You are too good, Mira repeated. Rumi reached for Zoe, and Zoe came immediately, letting herself be pulled into Rumi's arms. Mira leaned in after a second, and then they were tangled together in the middle of the bed, crying again for a completely different reason than before. Rumi pressed her face into Zoe's shoulder. I don't want you to feel left out, she whispered. Zoe's arms tightened around her. I won't. You might. Then we'll talk about it, Zoe said. And you'll reassure me. And Mira will overthink herself into a headache. And I'll tell her to stop making her forehead wrinkle. And we'll figure it out like we always do. Mira gave a wet, offended laugh against them. My forehead does not wrinkle. It does when you're emotionally constipated. Rumi choked on a laugh through her tears. Mira pulled back enough to glare weakly at Zoe. I hate that phrase. I know. You still said it. You need to hear it. Mira stared at her, then shook her head, smiling despite the tears on her face. Rumi looked down at their hands. 3 rings, 3 promises. 2 names, maybe, someday on a legal document. But 3 here, 3 in the bed, 3 in the room where the question had been asked and answered before the world could understand it. Listen, 2's a company, but they want a crowd, okay? 2's company, but they want a crowd. It's simple as that. It's simple as that. I don't know how it works with Marriage Titan. What do you mean? Palimony is an option outside the US. Palimony? Palimony. They could take her to Bangladesh. There are some there are some countries where polygamy is legal. Interesting. Interesting. Huh. Huh. Interesting. But it would still affect the tax situation. But this is interesting to know. Interesting. Interesting. There are some countries where polygamy in marriage is like legal, but that's mostly to allow men to have multiple wives. So I don't know how it would work with like 3 women in any country, to be honest. Lots of different countries have varying levels of how legal / easy it is, but it is possible. I don't know why Egypt is the one I always remember. A lot of countries in Africa and Asia do have like legal polygamy. But again, like I said, it's mostly for men to have multiple wives. So sigh. As someone who comes from a country who criminalizes any queer relationship, so great. We live in a great world that definitely does not need changing. In Asia, a lot of places it's legal only if you're Muslim. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. Give me a sec. Yeah, I don't know the details of that, but I had like during one of these streams, I had like went into like a Wikipedia rabbit hole where we were looking up polygamy. Africa, there's more places where it's legal for anyone. Yeah. That's what I remember. Okay, let's keep going. Whatever. Legal schmeagle stuff. We don't care. They're married. They're married, and that's what's important. Leg is going up. Leg is going up. And Zoe said slowly, her thumb brushing over Mira's knuckles. If it still feels a little hard to swallow, and if you're worried about me being left out, Mira looked at her warily, like she already knew Zoe was about to say something that would make her chest hurt. Zoe's smile was soft. Why don't you two take my last name? Wait, that's cute. That's cute. That's cute. Listen, that's cute. That's cute. That's real cute. Okay. Mira's eyes widened. Her head snapped towards Zoe so fast, Rumi almost laughed, except she couldn't because her own breath had caught somewhere in her throat. Zoe's last name, Rumi Pak. The thought bloomed in her chest before she could stop it. Warm and impossible, and so tender it made her face heat instantly. Having Zoe's last name, being tied to her that way, not just by love, not just by rings, not just by the private promises they made in bed with tears swollen eyes and tangled hands, but by a name. A name people would say out loud, a name that would sit beside hers on documents, books, mail, hotel reservations, little ordinary places where the world would have to recognize, even briefly, that she belonged to someone, that someone belonged to her too. Rumi blinked a few times, suddenly afraid she might start crying again. Zoe looked between them, a little shy now despite being the one who had suggested it. Since you feel like I'd be left out, she said, take my last name. Is that a good compromise? Mira stared at her. Her cheeks had started to redden, though she tried to hide it by narrowing her eyes. Rumi knew that look. Mira was overwhelmed and pretending to be offended by the audacity of being loved too well. Yes, Mira said finally. Zoe's smile widened. Rumi's own smile came slower, softer, spreading through the ache in her chest. I honestly wouldn't have it any other way, she said. I'd love to be part of your family, Zoe. Zoe's face crumpled immediately, and before Rumi could say anything else, Zoe pulled her in and kissed her. Rumi laughed against her mouth, surprised by how fast it happened. But then Zoe was peppering kisses across her cheeks, her nose, her jaw, anywhere she could reach. You were already family when we were girlfriends, silly, Zoe said between kisses. Rumi tried to squirm away, laughing harder now, but Zoe held on with dramatic determination. I know, Rumi said, breathless. I know, but still. Nope, no, still. You are already mine. Rumi's face burned. Mira huffed beside them, arms folded like she had not also gone pink all the way to her ears. Yeah, she muttered. That was honestly the only acceptable plan. Zoe paused and turned toward her, eyes bright. Oh? Mira looked away. No way I was letting you two have my family's last name. I mean, that's what I thought. I mean, Rumi's last name would be like, all right, I guess, but like, there's no one remaining of her family. Like, it would be kind of sad. It might be kind of symbolic, but I don't know. Zoe feels right. Rumi's expression softened immediately because, of course, Mira's family name came with weight, with expectation, with rooms too cold and parents too polished, and a history Mira had spent years trying to claw her way out of. She wouldn't hand that name to them, not because she didn't want them, but because she loved them too much to tie them to something that had hurt her. Rumi reached for her before Mira could hide too far behind the joke. She pulled Mira in by the sleeve and started kissing all over her face. Mira made an offended noise immediately. Rumi? No. Stop. You're being cute. I am not being cute. You are, Zoe said, joining in instantly and pressing a kiss to Mira's other cheek. Mira groaned, trapped between them as they kissed her face until she stopped pretending she wasn't smiling. For a few seconds, the room was light again, soft and silly. 3 rings, 3 flushed faces, 3 people trying to make something impossible feel possible by holding each other tightly enough. Then Mira's smile faded a little. But there's still the same problem as before, she said quietly. Even two of us can't legally marry here. Zoe's fingers stilled against Rumi's waist. Rumi looked down at the sheets. Right. Because even the compromise had a wall behind it. Even if Rumi and Mira took Zoe's name, even if they had a ceremony, even if the three of them built a whole private language of wife and forever and hours, the law still sat outside the door, cold and unmoved. Zoe was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled back slightly, chewing on her lower lip. Well, she said, not here, no. Rumi looked up. Mira did too. Zoe glanced between them, suddenly nervous in a way she hadn't been when suggesting the last name. There's America, she said. They allow it. But Mira and okay, I'll let you explain it. Okay, I am like still like, but neither of them are citizens though. Mira's brows drew together. Rumi's heart gave a strange, uncertain thud. Zoe sat up a little more, folding her legs beneath her as if she needed to be steady for this part. What what would you think? She asked carefully about moving there. What would be the case if you were not citizens, but you were to marry in another country? I guess people do it. I don't know how it is specifically in the US because you would need to get like a residential card and like you would need to become a resident if they're gonna live there too. So in this case, it would make more sense for them to marry Zoe because Zoe is an American citizen. This is getting so like that's a fanfic. Calm down. It's a fanfic. Oh my god. The room went still. Rumi blinked, moving. Visa, exactly. Listen, I am on a visa. It was not easy to get a visa. The US does not make it easy to get a visa though. Anyway, they can do whatever. Anyway, it's a fanfic. It's not important. Oh my god. Rumi blinked, moving, leaving Seoul, leaving the apartment, leaving the streets she knew, the cafes they visited, the school they had complained about, the parks where Zoe made her try things she was terrible at, the restaurants Mira pretended not to like before becoming deeply opinionated about them. Leaving Chinu, Abby, Mystery, everyone. Maybe they could visit. Maybe some of them would come too someday. Maybe it didn't have to mean forever. But still, the thought opened something hollow in her stomach. And then another name rose before all the others. Celine. Rumi's throat tightened so quickly she had to look down. Celine, who had finally started to become Omma in a way Rumi was still afraid to say too loudly. Celine, who texted too much when Rumi didn't answer. Celine, who had called her Umi outside a restaurant and cried like that one little word had cost her years of regret. Celine, who had only just come back to her. The thought of leaving her hit with such sudden pain that Rumi's eyes burned. It felt childish. It felt unfair. She was grown. She was engaged. She could move to another country with the women she loved if that was what made sense for their future. But some part of her still felt like a little girl being asked to let go of a hand she had only just managed to reach. Mira was quiet too, her lip caught between her teeth as she looked down at her ring. Where would we go? She asked. Zoe's gaze flicked to Rumi for half a second, then back to Mira. California? She said. My hometown. I know it might not be ideal, but we could stay with my mom for a while, just until you two get used to everything and we are stable enough to get our own place. Mira nodded slowly, though Rumi could tell she was already thinking through the logistics. See, Mira, girl, you got me. Visas, money, jobs, housing, their work. I, she let out a careful breath. I'm fine with that. Zoe's face softened, relieved but still hesitant. Then she looked at Rumi. The relief vanished almost instantly. Rumi? Rumi hadn't realized how tightly she was pressing her lips together until Zoe said her name. She looked up. Zoe's expression broke a little at whatever she saw on her face. Rumi hated that. Hated making the room heavier when Zoe was just trying to find them a way forward. Hated that part of her that wanted to say yes immediately because of course she wanted a life with them, a legal marriage, a home where they could all breathe easier. Hated that another part of her had already curled around Celine's name and refused to let go. I Rumi swallowed, but it didn't help. I'd have to think about it. Zoe immediately nodded. No disappointment, no pressure, just understanding so fast it made Rumi's eyes sting worse. Of course, Zoe said quietly, squeezing her hand. Of course. I know it's a big ask. Take as long as you need. Rumi nodded, but the guilt rose anyway. Because Zoe looked so gentle, because Mira was watching her with concern instead of frustration, because they deserved an answer that didn't shake. I'm sorry, Rumi whispered, the heel of her hand to one eye. No, Mira said immediately. She shifted closer, wrapping an arm around Rumi and pressing a kiss to the side of her head. No, Rumi, don't apologize. Zoe moved in too, her hand sliding over Rumi's arm. It's not a small thing, Zoe said softly. We know that. Rumi let out a shaky breath. It's just, she looked down at their hands, at the rings, at the future sitting between them, so bright and complicated, it hurt to look at directly. I want to, I do. I want everything with you both. We know, Mira murmured. But leaving? Rumi's voice cracked before she could stop it. She squeezed her eyes shut. Leaving Celine felt like betrayal. Leaving felt like abandoning the fragile thing they had only just started rebuilding. Leaving felt like loving one family meant stepping away from another. Zoe's fingers tightened around hers. Celine? She asked gently. Rumi nodded once, unable to say it. Mira's arm held her a little closer. Oh, baby, Zoe whispered. Rumi pressed her face into her hands, embarrassed by the tears that were already slipping through. I know I'm not a kid, she said, voice muffled. I know I can leave. I know people move. I know it doesn't mean I'm abandoning her or anything. I know that. But it feels like it, Mira said. Rumi nodded again. Zoe leaned in and kissed her shoulder. Then we'll talk to her when you're ready, she said. Not tonight, not tomorrow unless you want, but eventually. And maybe she'll have thoughts. Maybe she'll be sad. Maybe she'll surprise you. Rumi lowered her hands just enough to look at her. Zoe gave her a small, watery smile. And maybe she'll tell you to go build your life because she loves you. Rumi's mouth trembled. Mira brushed Rumi's hair away from her face. You don't have to choose right now, she said. We just got engaged. We're allowed to sit with the impossible part for a while. Rumi gave a tiny, wet laugh. Romantic. Mira's mouth twitched. I'm very romantic. Zoe nodded solemnly. Nothing says romance like immigration paperwork and emotional distress. Rumi laughed despite herself, wiping at her cheeks. She leaned forward, and they met her halfway, arms wrapping around them from both sides until she was tucked between them again. The future still sat outside the room, waiting with all its sharp edges and impossible questions. But for now, Rumi let herself stay here, in the bed, with their rings. With Zoe's last name glowing quiet in the back of her mind, with Mira's lips pressed to her hair and Zoe's holding hers like she had all the time in the world to decide what came next. Sigh. Reality comes crashing down, am I right? Ah. Plot twist, there's going to be another 500k words of Two's company, and it's all legal issues. Oh my god. Sorry, TikTok is being weird again. Ow, my foot. I'm just gonna look at something real quick. How is YouTube doing? No, yes. Oh my god, yes. Yeah. Am I right? I'm like, what's the logistics of it all? Listen, I always say that I'm a Rumi sun, but I am a Mira moon. I am like I don't know. My brain and my moon is more emotional though. I don't know. I'm a lot like all of the girls combined. So we I don't know. I saw Mira and I was like, girl, you are asking the right questions. It's beautiful, Rumi, Celine murmured. Her voice came out softer than Rumi expected, almost breathless. She held Rumi's hand carefully in both of hers, thumb brushing over the ring like she was afraid to touch too hard. The gold caught the light every time Rumi's fingers trembled, and Celine's eyes followed the shimmer with a kind of quiet awe that made Rumi's throat tighten all over again. For a moment, Celine didn't say anything else. She just looked. Not only at the ring, Rumi realized, at her hand, at the proof of it, at the fact that Rumi was sitting in front of her with swollen eyes, a shaking smile, and a future on her finger. I'm going to take my fan because. For a moment, Celine didn't say anything else. Future on her finger. Yes, yes, yes. Then Celine blinked, her brows drawing together slightly as she studied Rumi's hand more closely. Is there a reason you have to? Rumi laughed, wiping under her eye with her free hand. It came out wet, still half caught in all the emotions she hadn't fully managed to put away. But it felt good, too. Ridiculous, a little. Like, even in the middle of something huge, Zoe had found a way to make the story chaotic. Zoe bought rings, too, Rumi said. She was planning to propose, like, not even a week after me. Celine looked up at her. Rumi smiled, a little helplessly. I beat her to it. Mouth parted. Then she let out a quiet laugh. Of course she did. Right? Rumi sniffed, smiling down at the rings. So we kept them. Each of us has two, the one we bought and the one someone else gave us. Me and Zoe have our own rings that we picked, and then the others. Celine's thumb moved once more over Rumi's ring. There was something careful in the gesture, something reverent. And Mira? Celine asked, raising a brow. Why not three? Rumi's smile widened before she could stop it. Mira got a little grumpy. That sounds right. She was still in the planning stage, Rumi said, laughing softly, like she hadn't found the perfect ones yet. And then Zoe and I both proposed before she could, so she was annoyed about it. Celine hummed, clearly amused. We told her she already gave us those beautiful promise rings in college, so she didn't need to get us another one. And did that work? Rumi looked down, her lips twitching. Not really. Celine smiled. I still think she might, Rumi admitted. She keeps pretending she's over it, but she is absolutely not over it. No, Celine said dryly. I doubt she is. Rumi laughed again, but the sound faded quickly when Celine's gaze softened. Celine looked at her for a long moment, and Rumi felt the shift before the words even came. I'm so happy for you, Rumi, she said. Rumi's face crumpled immediately. She tried to hold it together, she really did, but the tenderness in Celine's voice slipped straight past her defenses, undoing whatever fragile composure she'd managed to gather on the way over. Celine reached for her, and Rumi went without hesitation. The hug was tight, almost desperate on both sides. Rumi folded into her, arms wrapping around Celine's middle as Celine held the back of her head with one hand and pressed the other firmly between her shoulders. Rumi held on tighter. For a while, she didn't speak. She just let herself be held. Celine was warm, familiar now in a way that still sometimes surprised her. She smelled faintly of tea and the soap she always used, and when Rumi tucked her face against her shoulder, her body recognized this version of comfort before her mind had time to question it. She closed her eyes, breathing into the warmth of Celine's coat. Will you come to our... Rumi asked quietly. Celine's arms tightened around her immediately. Of course. The answer came so quickly that Rumi almost laughed. Instead, she bit her lip and nodded against Celine's shoulder. Of course. Like there had never been any other answer. Like Celine had already placed herself there, in the future, seated close enough to see Rumi's hands tremble as she said her vows. Like she had already decided she would be there. Rumi's throat tightened again. Celine must have felt the shift because her hand slowed gently against Rumi's back. You seem a bit sad, though, she murmured. What's the matter? Rumi only held her tighter instead of answering. She didn't want to pull away. She didn't want to look at Celine while saying it, because if she did, the words might become too real. The decision might sharpen into something final. The future might stop feeling like something distant they were only talking about and start feeling like a suitcase already waiting by the door. We're thinking about moving to America, Rumi said softly. Celine stilled. Rumi felt it. The smallest pause in her breathing. So that two of us can get married legally, Rumi continued, forcing the words out before she could lose them. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be something. And Zoe's mom said we could stay with her until we figure things out. Celine didn't answer right away. Rumi's fingers curled tighter into the back of her coat. But her voice wavered. I don't want to leave us behind. The silence that followed felt bigger than the room itself. Rumi tried to swallow, but it hurt. Celine's hand resumed its slow movement over her back, steady and grounding. All this, she said quietly, includes me, right? Something in Rumi gave at the softness of it. Her body answered before her voice could. She tightened around Celine instinctively, pressing her face deeper into her shoulder before managing a small, slow nod. And then the feeling crept in. Shame, quiet and heavy. Ashamed of needing her this much. Ashamed that after years of believing she could survive without Celine, after all the anger, the distance, the hurt, she had finally allowed herself to want her, and now the thought of leaving felt unbearable. Celine took a breath. Then she pulled back, gentle but firm, just enough to cup Rumi's face in both hands. Rumi tried to look away, but Celine didn't let her, her thumbs settling beneath her damp eyes. Oh, Rumi, she whispered. The way she said it made something in her chest cave in. It's okay, Celine murmured. You should go. Build a life for yourself. Rumi shook her head before she'd even finished. But I want you in my life, she choked out. I will be. You won't be there. I can call, Celine said, reaching for something practical, even as her voice trembled at the edges. I can visit. You can visit. We can send each other too many messages and complain about time zones. We don't have to cut contact just because there's an ocean in the middle. A sob slipped out of Rumi, raw and uneven, frustration, embarrassment, and heartbreak tangling together. But you'll be by yourself here, she said. But you'll be by yourself here, she said, her voice breaking. And I. The rest of the sentence collapsed before it could fully form. Celine's thumbs moved quickly, brushing away the tears spilling down Rumi's cheeks. Rumi looked at her through blurred vision, unable to stop now that the words had started. I don't want to leave my Ummah. Celine broke. There was no softer way to put it. Her face folded instantly, whatever careful strength she'd been holding shattering in plain view. Her lips parted on a breath that sounded almost wounded, and tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. Rumi, she whispered, and Rumi cried harder, because there it was, the thing that had been sitting in her chest since Zoe first mentioned America. Celine pulled her in and kissed her forehead once, then again, like she couldn't help herself. Her thumbs wiped uselessly at Rumi's tears while her own kept falling. My Umi, she murmured, voice breaking. Oh, my sweet girl. Rumi made a small, helpless sound and clutched at her wrists. I know it's not my problem, she said quickly, stumbling over the words. I know I'm not supposed to make my decisions around you. I know that. I know I'm grown and I know I can go. And I know it doesn't mean I'm abandoning you, but it feels like. Rumi? Rumi stopped. Celine's voice was still shaking, but there was something steady beneath it now. I won't be alone here, she said softly. Rumi blinked. The words took a second to make sense. Then Celine's mouth curved faintly, tender and shy in a way Rumi had almost never seen from her. I won't be alone. Rumi stared at her. Then her eyes widened at the realization. Wait, she breathed. You and... Celine's smile grew a little, though her cheeks had colored. She nodded once. Rumi's mouth fell open. She stared at her for another second. Then a laugh broke out of her. It came out wet and shaky and completely overwhelmed, but it was a laugh. The grief in her chest didn't vanish, not even close, but something loosened around it. Something that had been clenched so tight she hadn't realized she was holding it. Celine wouldn't be alone. Celine had someone. Someone who knew how to sit beside her. Someone who worked with her awkwardness instead of making her feel wrong for it. My old woman Yuri. My old woman Yuri. Let's go. Please, please. Someone who made her talk about cooking hacks and garlic ratios and Miyang without flinching at the name. Cece. Rumi wiped at her cheeks. Wait, Cece is such a good ship name? Cece! Cece! That's so cute! Rumi wiped at her cheeks, still staring. How long? Celine sighed. That is not important. It is extremely important. It's new. How new, Rumi? I'm moving countries, possibly. I think I deserve gossip. Give me that chisme. Celine looked pained. You'll get that from Zoe. I get many things from Zoe. Now answer it. Celine exhaled, but there was a softness in it. We've been talking, she said carefully. Rumi's brows lifted. Talking? Yes. Like talking? Celine gave her a flat look through her tears. Rumi tried very hard not to smile too much. Celine failed to hold the look for more than 2 seconds before glancing away again. She has been very kind to me, she said, quieter now. Patient, more patient than I probably deserve. Rumi's smile softened. And I like being around her, Celine admitted, even when she says things just to get a reaction. That sounds like her. It is very annoying. You like it? Celine's silence was answer enough. Rumi's chest ached all over again, but this time it wasn't only sadness. I'm happy for you, she whispered. Celine looked back at her. Rumi meant it. She could feel the truth of it sitting right beside the hurt. She was still scared to leave, still sad, still unsure how to imagine a life where Celine wasn't close enough to visit whenever the ache got too loud. But Celine wouldn't be standing still. She wouldn't be frozen in the old grief, waiting in a house full of ghosts. She was building something too, slowly, awkwardly, in her own stiff, dry, Celine way. And somehow that made leaving feel less like abandonment and more like both of them learning how to live. Celine brushed another tear from Rumi's cheek. I want you in my life too, she said. Do you understand? Rumi nodded, lips trembling. Distance won't change that. It might make it harder. It will, Celine said honestly. Some days. Rumi let out a small, broken laugh, the sound catching halfway through. Celine's lips curved into a faint, understanding smile. But not impossible, she added gently. And you are not responsible for staying small just so I don't have to miss you. Rumi's face crumpled again, the words hitting somewhere deeper than she was prepared for. Celine drew her closer until their foreheads rested together, grounding her there. You already lost too much because of me, she whispered. I won't let you lose this too. Rumi squeezed her eyes shut, her breath unsteady. I'm scared. I know. I want to marry them. I know. I want to stay near you. I know, Umi. Rumi inhaled shakily, the nickname moving through her like something gentle pressed over a bruise, easing it just enough to breathe again. Celine kissed her forehead once more, lingering there. You can want You can want both," she murmured. "That doesn't make you selfish. It means you're loved in more than one place." Rumi broke again, quiet tears slipping out before she could stop them. Celine let out a soft, tearful laugh of her own and pulled her into another hug. This time, Rumi didn't hesitate. She simply folded into it, letting herself be held without apology. Interesting. I just like peeked the next section and I'm like, oh, interesting. Oh, hello? No. Wait, what are you saying? Cece. It's so hot in here. I was just checking out the comments. This is my little voice break because I've been streaming pretty often this week. I'm like, ooh, it does take a toll on the voice. Oh no. 4 years ago, two papers were practically shoved into Zoe's face the second she stepped into the apartment. She blinked, then leaned back slightly, laughing as her eyes tried to focus on what was being held inches from her nose. Whoa, hello to you too? Rumi was standing there with her cheeks flushed, biting down on a smile like she was trying to keep it contained and failing terribly. Beside her, Mira looked far more composed, but Zoe knew her too well. The faint pink at the tips of her ears gave her away immediately. Zoe glanced down at the papers, then stilled. Mira Pak, Rumi Pak. For a second, she didn't understand. Or maybe she did, and her brain just needed a moment to catch up because the feeling arrived before the thought did, warm and huge, and suddenly enough to knock the air out of her. Her mouth parted. Rumi rocked slightly on her feet, nervous now that the reveal was actually happening. Blech. We realized, Mira said, clearing her throat like she wasn't also moments away from cracking, that we couldn't take her last name that we couldn't take her last name someday if we didn't already have it as one of our last names. Zoe looked up at them. Mira shrugged, but her voice had gone softer. So we fixed it. Rumi's smile trembled. We're pucks now, too, she said. Zoe made a sound. Not a word, not anything dignified. Just a tiny broken noise that punched out of her chest before she could stop it. Rumi's eyes widened. Zoe? Zoe tackled both of them. The papers crinkled between them as she threw her arms around their necks, nearly knocking Mira backward and making Rumi stumble with a startled laugh. Zoe held on tight, face pressed somewhere between their shoulders, her whole body shaking with the force of what she refused to let turn fully into sobs. You can't just do that, Zoe cried, voice muffled. You can't just hand me paperwork and destroy me in my own house. Mira's arms came around her, firm and warm. You said you wanted us to take your last name. Yeah, at the wedding. Zoe pulled back just enough to look at them, eyes already wet. Not ambush me with legal documents like romantic criminals. Rumi laughed through her own tears. Romantic criminals? You committed emotional fraud. Mira's mouth twitched. That's not a crime. It is today. Rumi lifted the paper again, hands trembling slightly. Zoe looked at it, at their names, at Puck sitting beside both of them like it had always belonged there. Then she started crying for real. Rumi's expression crumbled instantly. Oh, baby. No, don't baby me. Zoe wiped at her face uselessly. I'm mad at you. You're crying. Angrily, Mira kissed her temple. Sure. Zoe clutched them both closer again, the papers trapped safely between their bodies. Mira Puck, Rumi Puck, Zoe Puck. Not married yet, not legally, not officially, not in every way they wanted, but already family, already choosing it, already writing themselves into the same name before the world could decide how much of them it was willing to recognize. Their name, their family, their beginning. And we have wedding day. That's part of the reason why I wore this outfit. I was like, is this too on the nose? It might be. I don't care though. Little sip. Woo. Wedding day. We're like halfway through the. Oh, we're more than halfway through day. Wedding day. You look so. Celine started, then had to stop when her voice caught. She'd been smoothing her hands down the front of her dress, shine gathering in Celine's eyes. She smiled, feeling her own throat tighten. Don't make me cry, she said softly. It'll ruin my makeup. Celine sniffed once, then let out a watery laugh. I'm sorry, she murmured, stepping closer. You just look astonishingly beautiful. Her fingers rose carefully to brush over the soft purple waves of Rumi's hair. It had been curled in loose, glossy waves that fell over one shoulder and down her back, turning gentle beneath her chin and along her collarbone. Tiny gold pins had been tucked through one side, delicate little floral pieces that caught the light every time she moved, and a sheer lilac veil spilled from the back like mist. Rumi took in a slow breath and looked at herself again in the mirror. The dress was everything she had secretly wanted and more, and maybe that was why it still didn't feel fully real. Mira had made it for her. Of course she had. She'd pretended to be calm through the fittings, pretended it was just fabric and measurements and structure and drape. But Rumi had seen the way her hands softened every time they adjusted the waist or fixed the lay of the skirt. She had seen the way Zoe got teary just watching sketches turn into something tangible. The gown itself was a pale, luminous lavender, so light it looked silver in some angles and flower soft in others. The bodice was fitted and delicate, with a sweetheart neckline softened by the sheer off the shoulder sleeves that floated against her arms like clouded silk. Fine beadwork and hand sewn floral embroidery climbed over the corseted waist, subtle and intricate, as though tiny wisteria blooms had been stitched directly into the fabric. The skirt flowed from there in weightless layers of chiffon and tulle, trailing behind her in a soft sweep that made her feel taller, softer, almost unreal. When she moved, the light caught in the faint shimmer sewn into the outer layer, and the whole dress seemed to glow. At her throat rested a thin gold chain with a small pendant, and matching earrings brushed just. Everything about it felt like Mira had understood exactly how Rumi wanted to feel today. Rumi swallowed hard and looked back at Celine. She did a really good job, she said, her voice coming out quieter than she'd meant it to. Celine smiled through her tears. She always does, she murmured, her gaze lingering on Rumi for a moment before softening even further. But today she made something for the woman she loves, and I think that makes it different. Rumi felt her chest tighten. Celine reached up, gently cupping her cheek. My Umi, she whispered, you look like a dream. That was all it took. Rumi's eyes filled instantly, and she let out a small, helpless laugh as she hurriedly rubbed at one with the heel of her hand. No, no, she mumbled. We just said no crying. A warmer laugh escaped Celine. Right, she agreed softly. No crying. The words had barely left her mouth before tears slipped down her own cheeks. Rumi could only shake her head with a watery smile before stepping into her arms. Celine embraced her without hesitation, holding her close as one hand smoothed carefully over the back of her hair, mindful not to disturb the veil. For a long moment, Rumi simply stared at her. For a long moment, Rumi simply stayed there. Sometimes my brain just makes up words, guys. She breathed in slowly, letting herself sink into the embrace, holding on to the familiar warmth wrapped around her. Years ago, this woman had felt impossibly far away, separated from her by grief, hurt, and everything left unsaid. Now Celine stood beside her, holding her together on one of the biggest days of her life. When she finally eased apart, Celine brushed one last thumb beneath Rumi's eye before offering her arm with a gentle smile. Ready? Rumi glanced down at it before lifting her eyes to meet Celine's. Then she nodded. As I'll ever be. The ceremony was being held in a private garden venue tucked into one of the quieter, prettier corners of Seoul, where the city felt softened rather than distant. Beyond the old stone walls, the skyline still shimmered in the distance, its glass towers catching the afternoon light. But inside the venue, the world seemed to slow. Flowering trees arched gracefully above the aisle, their branches draped with pale blossoms and cascading strands of lilac and white florals that swayed lazily in the breeze. Rows of ivory chairs lined the stone pathway, guiding the eye toward a wide floral arch overlooking a stretch of vibrant green where the sky had begun to turn warm with the first hints of evening gold. Music floated through the garden, delicate and warm. The moment Rumi stepped out, every sound seemed to shift. The guests rose. The little murmur that had filled the space quieted into something softer, touched with awe, and suddenly Rumi could feel all of them looking at her. Her stomach flipped. Her grip tightened a little on Celine's arm. Celine glanced down at her, her expression fond and knowing. Breathe. Then they started down the aisle. The stone path seemed longer than it had during rehearsal, longer and brighter, and somehow unreal beneath the soft shower of flower petals already scattered along it. Rumi tried not to look at everyone at first, but she caught pieces anyway. Zoe's mom already crying, Ginu grinning so hard he looked personally offended by his own emotions, Abby holding his chest dramatically, Mystery with his phone lowered for once, just watching. Familiar faces, loved faces, all blurred around the edges by the fact that Rumi's heart was beating so hard she could hear it. Then she looked up. The air left her lungs. Zoe and Mira were waiting for her beneath the arch, and for a second, the whole world narrowed to just them. Zoe stood to the left, glowing. Her dress was soft and romantic in a way that could only ever be her. A flowing gown in warm ivory with the faintest wash of lilac through the skirt whenever it caught the light. The neckline curved gently off her shoulders, and delicate floral applique drifted down the bodice like petals pressed there by hand. The sleeves were sheer and airy, and the skirt moved around her like water each time she shifted. Her hair had been left long and loosely styled, pinned back just enough to show the gold at her ears and the brightness in her face. Her eyes were already glossy, and her smile, God, her smile, looked so open and overwhelmed that Rumi thought she might cry right there in the aisle. Mira stood beside her, and Rumi's breath caught all over again. She looked devastating. Her gown was elegant in a way that made sense for her, something refined and striking and impossibly well tailored. It was a sleek, fitted silhouette in pearl-toned ivory with cool lavender undertones, the structure of it sharp enough to flatter and soft enough not to feel severe. The bodice crossed neatly over itself with sculpted precision before flowing into a long, graceful skirt with a slit hidden beneath its folds. Fine embroidery traced one side of the dress and the edge of the train, understated until the light caught it and revealed tiny silver lilac detailing. She wore her hair up, exposing the line of her neck and the small gold earrings at her ears, and her makeup was clean and elegant, letting the intensity in her gaze do most of the work. Mira looked at her and as though she'd forgotten there was anyone else in the garden, as though the aisle had emptied the moment Rumi appeared, as though Rumi had stepped out of some private dream and into their hands. And Zoe was already crying. The sight almost pulled a laugh out of Rumi. Zoe had her lips pressed together in a valiant attempt to keep herself composed, but it clearly wasn't working. Beside her, Mira's expression had softened into something so open, so completely unguarded, that it made Rumi's chest ache. Celine noticed it too. She leaned in just enough to murmur, "They look like they're about to pass out." A tiny, breathless laugh escaped Rumi. "They do." "You do too, for the record." "That's not helpful." "It's true." The rest of the walk seemed to pass in a blur. With every step, the distance between them grew smaller, and by the time they reached the front, Rumi could feel her hands trembling. Celine came to a stop beside her before turning to face her completely. For a moment, everything else, the ceremony, the guests, the flowers swaying gently in the breeze, faded into the background once again. Celine's eyes shimmered with tears, but her smile never wavered. She reached for both of Rumi's hands, holding them carefully between her own before giving them a gentle squeeze. "I am so proud of you," she said softly. Rumi's face crumpled almost immediately. Celine only smiled, her thumbs brushing low, comforting circles around Rumi's knuckles. "You built a life," she whispered, "a beautiful one." Rumi swallowed hard against the tears threatening to spill over. Then Celine leaned forward and then Celine leaned forward and pressed a lingering kiss to her forehead. When she finally drew back, she gave Rumi's hands one last reassuring squeeze before gently guiding her to the final step forward. By now, Zoe wasn't even pretending to hide it anymore. Tears streamed freely down her face, and Mira looked only a heartbeat away from joining her. The moment Rumi stepped into place between them, Zoe reached for one of her hands while Mira quietly took the other. Warmth settled around her from both sides, grounding her all at once. She looked at them, really looked, at Zoe's tear bright eyes and trembling smile, at Mira's carefully maintained composure, and the way her thumb had already begun absently brushing over Rumi's knuckles, as though comforting her had become such second nature that she wasn't even aware she was doing it. Something inside Rumi shifted. The space in her chest that had once felt hollowed out, cold, and permanently unfinished no longer echoed the way it used to. It wasn't perfectly healed. The scars were still there, the grief was still there, but it wasn't empty anymore. It was full. A soft laugh slipped through the tears she'd long since lost the battle against. "You both look so pretty," she whispered. Zoe let out a watery laugh. "Rumi?" Beside her, Mira gave the faintest shake of her head. "I am forever haunted by those freaking fire trucks. Oh my God." Beside her, Mira gave the faintest shake of her head, though her own eyes had grown suspiciously bright. "You're one to talk," she murmured. Rumi smiled helplessly, squeezed between them beneath the flowers and the open soul sky. Her Ummah only steps behind her, the people she loved all around her, and the two women she was about to promise herself to, holding her hands like they already knew she was theirs. Very cute. I love that it is Rumi walking through the aisle and coming towards them, like the setup like the setup of her joining their little relationship. I don't know if that was intended to like parallel that, but I'm gonna take it as I would. So you know what? Sorry, the shame bot is shaming me. Shame, shame, shame. I will do my backlogs. Don't worry. So silly. Shame, shame, shame. Even though little projects going on. Wait, is this a wedding? Yes! Yes, this is Two's Company. This is the last chapter of Two's Company. I always want to say episode. For some reason, whenever I'm describing fanfic, I always want to say episode. I know it's not an episode, it's a chapter. But it is a wedding. It is 5 years after the end of chapter 44 of Two's Company. So it's really cute. It's really cute. We are gathered here today, the officiant began, voice carrying gently through the garden, to witness and celebrate the union of Rumi, Zoe, and Mira. The words moved through the air with a softness that still somehow landed heavily in Rumi's chest. Her fingers tightened around Zoe's and Mira's hands. The officiant smiled at them before continuing. Today is not only about vows, rings, or ceremony. It is about three people choosing, with full hearts and open hands, to build a life together. It is about love that made room where the world did not always know how to. Love that endured change, distance, uncertainty, grief, healing, and time. Love that did not ask to be made smaller in order to be real. Rumi's breath caught. Zoe's thumb brushed over her knuckles. Mira's hand squeezed hers once, firm and grounding. They technically have children. They have their little cats. They have their cats. They have Nim and Ropo. I remembered the name. Ropo. Hi, Rose. Our girlies are getting married. And they have their little kittens named after the 4 stages of the water cycle. I will never get over that toss. I will never get over that. Dude, I sobbed so fucking hard. Aww. That did not ask to be made smaller in order to be real. Rumi's breath caught. Zoe's thumb brushed over her knuckles. Don't spoil it for me. Mira's hand squeezed hers once, firm and grounding. Oh, I need one of them to get. For some reason, from the corner of my eye, I read that as I heard one of them got pregnant, and I'm like, no, don't spoil it for me. Rose, do that in the Discord. No, I'm just kidding. You can do that wherever. Mira's hand squeezed hers once, firm and grounding. The garden had gone quiet around them, but Rumi could feel everyone there, their friends, their family, people who had watched them grow into this moment. Celine stood in the front row next to Cindy, eyes already wet, one hand pressed lightly against her mouth. Stacy was crying openly beside them, not even pretending otherwise. Ginu looked like he had bitten the inside of his cheek to keep himself together, and Abby had both hands clasped against his chest like he was physically restraining himself from sobbing out loud. Zella stood near Stacy in a little lavender dress, holding the small ring pillow against her stomach with the seriousness of someone entrusted with national treasure. Rumi looked back at Zoe and Mira. They were both watching her, like there was nowhere else in the world their eyes could go. The officiant glanced down at the small paper in his hands. Rumi, he said softly, you may begin. Rumi's stomach flipped. Right. Words. She knew words. Words were supposed to be the place where she felt safest. But standing here in front of Zoe and Mira, with both of them looking at her like she was already something sacred, Rumi suddenly understood that some feelings were almost cruel to language. Still, she breathed in. I wrote this down, she admitted, voice soft, because if I tried to speak from memory, I would probably either forget everything or start crying before the first sentence. A gentle laugh moved through the guests. Zoe's lips trembled into a smile. Mira's eyes softened. Rumi glanced down at the folded paper in her hand, but when she opened it, the words blurred almost immediately. She laughed once, breathless and nervous. Oh no. Zoe squeezed her hand. Take your time. Rumi looked up. The papers suddenly felt unnecessary, not because she remembered everything perfectly, but because they were there. Zoe with her bright, tearful eyes, Mira with her jaw tight, like she was trying so hard not to fall apart. The two of them holding her steady, the way they always had. Rumi let out a slow, unsteady breath before lowering the paper to her side. I used to think love was something other people knew how to do naturally, she began. Something people were born understanding, like breathing, like reaching, like knowing where to place your hands when someone cries. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. I didn't know how to ask for love without feeling like I was asking for too much. I didn't know how to receive it without looking for the moment it would disappear. And then I met both of you. Zoe's expression crumpled immediately. Beside her, Mira swallowed hard, her composure slipping just enough for Rumi to see the emotion she'd been trying so carefully to hide. Hi, Early. Hello. Hello. Okay, bye now. Good to see you. The sight made Rumi's chest ache in the gentlest way. She smiled through it. Wait, I lost it. Zoe, she said softly, turning toward her. You loved me loudly before I ever knew what to do with quiet. A shaky laugh escaped Zoe before she immediately pressed her lips together again. You made room for me everywhere, Rumi continued. On your couch, in your conversations, in your arms, in your life. You made love feel less like something I had to earn and more like somewhere I was allowed to come home to. She paused just long enough to steady her breathing. You taught me that joy could be safe, that laughter didn't always have to end, that someone could see the ugliest, most frightened parts of me and still reach for my hand like it was the easiest choice in the world. By then, Zoe had covered her mouth with her free hand, tears spilling freely down her cheeks. Rumi could feel her own doing the same. She didn't look away. She simply held Zoe's gaze, letting every word settle between them. And Mira, she continued, turning to the other side, you loved me carefully, but never halfway. You saw every place I tried to hide and never made me feel ashamed for needing time. You fed me when I forgot I had a body. Oh, you held me when I didn't know what to call what was hurting. You made safety practical, tangible, warm. You loved me in details so small I almost missed them until one day I realized those details had become the shape of my life. The shape of our life. That's one of the books. That's one of the books. Hey, I'm following. Hey, you get me? Hey, you get me? Bye, Rose. Oh, are you saying bye or are you saying bye to Early? I think you were saying bye to Early. Okay. Okay. I'm so normal. Sorry, you fed me when I forgot I had a body. Oof, Jesus Christ. Mira's eyes filled completely. Her lips parted. Yeah, I gotcha. But no sound came out. Rumi looked at both of them now. I don't know if I believe in destiny, she said quietly, but I believe in the two of you. I believe in the morning light in our kitchen. I believe in your hands finding mine in crowded rooms. I believe in every hard conversation we survived because none of us wanted to leave. I believe in the life we built when there was no map for us. And I believe in the life we will keep building after today. Her voice broke. I have lost enough to know that nothing is promised, but I am promising this anyway. I will love you both in every ordinary way I can. I will love you in grocery lists, in airport terminals, in quiet mornings, in bad days, in soup when you're sick, in notes left on counters, in every version of home we make. I will love you when it is easy, and I will choose you when it is hard. Zoe was fully crying now. Mira's thumb trembled against Rumi's knuckles. Rumi smiled, tears on her face. And if love is a place, she whispered, then the two of you are where I have been trying to get to my whole life. Zoe laughed through a sob, squeezing Rumi's hand so tightly it almost hurt. The officiant smiled gently. Zoe? Zoe sniffed hard, immediately shaking her head like she needed to physically recover. Okay, she said, voice watery. First of all, rude. Zoe pointed at Rumi with the hand not holding hers. You can't just do that. You can't just be beautiful and poetic and emotionally devastating in public and expect me to follow that. Rumi laughed, wiping at her cheek with her shoulder. Beside her, Mira let out a shaky breath that almost turned into a laugh of her own. Zoe glanced down at the folded paper in her hands before looking back up again. I also wrote mine down because, unlike my wife, I am not a professional word wizard. Warm laughter rippled through the garden. Rumi felt her heart flutter at the word wife. A faint blush immediately spread across Zoe's cheeks as she seemed to realize what she'd said, but after a brief, flustered smile, she forged ahead anyway. But, she continued, I am very good at yapping, so I think I'll be okay. These vows, bruh. Exactly. From the front row, Stacy smiled and called out gently, You always are. Zoe turned toward her mother. Mom, please, I'm trying to be elegant. You're doing great, baby. Zoe pressed her lips together, already looking dangerously close to crying again. See? She said, laughing through it. Now you're making it worse. The guests laughed with her, and somehow the sound settled the flutter in her chest just enough for her to take another steadying breath. When she looked back at Rumi and Mira, the playful smile softened into something quieter. Okay, she said, her voice gentle now. Rumi, Mira. Her voice caught on their names. She paused, drawing in one more slow breath before smiling to herself. I don't really know how to explain what it feels like to be loved by both of you without sounding incredibly cheesy. She gave a tiny shrug. So I decide to accept that I'm cheesy and just move on. A small smile tugged at the corner of Mira's mouth. Zoe's eyes found hers first. And the next part is Zoe's vows. I'm gonna. Hi, roses. Oh my god, does. Hi, does. Ah. Toss, this is so cute. Yeah, well, it deserves to be an episode. I mean, you could say that. One day, there will be TV series of polytrix fanfics. I'm saying it. I will be saying it. Girl, I was ugly crying at Selena and Rumi's combo in chapter 44. Yeah. I love Two's Company Celine so bad. I keep saying this, but like truly, I love her so bad. I love her arc. It's so great. Oh my god. Ogi. Mira, Zoe said, and her expression changed into something unbearably fond. You are the most terrifyingly loving person I know. Like, genuinely. You will threaten someone's life and then make sure they ate dinner in the same breath. You act like you're all sharp edges, but I know the truth. You're soft, deeply soft, annoyingly soft because you hide it and then get embarrassed when we notice. Mira looked down, cheeks coloring. Zoe smiled brighter. You made me feel safe before I even knew I needed safety. You let me be loud. You let me be messy. You let me be annoying, which is brave of you, honestly. Mira whispered, very brave. Zoe squeezed her hand. And you never made me feel like I had to shrink to be loved. You loved all of me, the fun parts, the anxious parts, the parts that talk too much, the parts that don't know how to stop trying to make everyone happy. You saw me and you stayed. Mira's eyes lifted again, wet and helpless. Zoe turned toward Rumi. And Rumi, she said, softer. My Rumi. Rumi's mouth trembled. Zoe's smile turned watery. You came into our lives so quietly at first, like you were afraid to make noise, like you thought needing anything would make you harder to love. And then we got to watch you become yourself. Rumi closed her eyes for a moment. Almost immediately, she felt Zoe's thumb brush across the back of her hand. You are funny in ways you don't even realize, Zoe said, smiling through tears. You are so gentle, it hurts. You're stubborn and dramatic and secretly competitive. And you make this little face whenever you're trying not to smile that makes me want to kiss you immediately, which is honestly very inconvenient in public settings. A laugh escaped Rumi despite the tears still running down her cheeks. Zoe grinned back at her before giving a small sniffle. And you are brave, she continued, her voice growing softer. Not in the shiny, fearless way people always like to talk about. You're brave in the way that actually matters. You were scared and loved anyway. You were hurt and stayed kind anyway. You were lost and still kept reaching. Her voice caught. And I'm so proud that I get to be reached for by you. Rumi squeezed her eyes shut as fresh tears slipped free. Zoe took another steadying breath before letting her gaze drift between the both of them. I promise to love you loudly when you need reminding, quietly when you need peace, and ridiculously whenever life gets too serious. I promise to make you laugh at the worst possible times, cry at the best ones, and make sure you eat actual meals even when you insist you're not hungry. Beside her, Mira murmured under her breath, That one's mostly for Rumi. Without missing a beat, Zoe smiled. It is for both of you. Rumi let out another watery laugh. Zoe smiled right back before continuing. I promise to keep choosing this, our weird, beautiful, impossible life together. I promise to be your wife in every way that matters, even if the paperwork insists on being stupid. I promise to make home feel warm. I promise to love both of you until I'm old and wrinkly and somehow still shorter than everyone else. That finally earned a laugh from Mira, who covered her face for a second as if trying to hide the fact that she'd completely lost the battle with her emotions. When Zoe spoke again, her voice had fallen to almost a whisper. And if I have to spend the rest of my life being completely unbearable about how much I love my wives, she smiled through the tears gathering in her eyes, then that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. The garden filled with a strange, wonderful chorus of laughter woven together with quiet sniffles. Zoe looked at them both, her eyes shining so brightly they almost seemed to glow. I love you, she said softly. Both of you, so much. Thank you for letting me love you. Rumi's chest ached so deeply it almost felt impossible to breathe. Beside her, Mira looked like she'd finally abandoned any hope of pretending she wasn't crying. The officiant allowed the silence to settle over everyone for a few long, reverent moments before turning with a gentle smile. Mira, get ready for like the most lover girl of vows to have ever lover girled. It's gonna be so good. I can already feel it. Wait, what is happening between you? All DM. Oh. Okay. Okay, let's go. Let's go, Mira time. Mira inhaled slowly, then let the breath leave her just as carefully. Her vows were folded neatly in one hand. Of course they were. The paper was crisp, the edges perfectly aligned, and Rumi would have bet anything they'd been rewritten at least 10 times until every sentence landed exactly where Mira wanted it. But when Mira glanced down at the page, she didn't read from it right away. Her jaw shifted slightly. Across from her, Zoe's expression softened almost immediately. Rumi's fingers tightened instinctively around Mira's hand. Mira swallowed once before lifting her gaze to meet theirs. I'm not as good at this as either of you. Zoe immediately opened her mouth. Without taking her eyes off them, Mira pointed at her. Do not argue during my vows. Zoe obediently closed. Drive safely, please. Drive safely, please. Do not argue with my during my vows. Zoe obediently closed her mouth again, pressing her lips together to hide a smile. A soft laugh escaped Rumi. The sound drew Mira's eyes toward her, and they softened in a way that made the corners of her own mouth lift almost imperceptibly. I spent a long time thinking love was something that made people weak, Mira began, or foolish or dependent. I thought needing someone meant handing them a weapon. I thought if I wanted too much, eventually it would be used against me. Her voice remained calm and even, though Rumi could feel the faint tremor running through the hand she was holding. Then I loved Zoe. Zoe's face crumpled almost instantly. Mira looked at her, and for the first time since she'd begun speaking, the composure she'd been holding so carefully slipped. And that terrified me, she admitted quietly, because suddenly there was someone in the world whose happiness mattered more to me than being untouchable. Someone who could look at me and make me want to be softer, even when I didn't know how. A fond, almost disbelieving smile touched her lips. You loved me before I knew how to stop flinching from it. You made my life loud and warm and impossible to control, and somehow she let out the smallest laugh. Somehow I became happier than I ever thought I deserved. By then, Zoe was crying openly into her free hand. Mira's own smile trembled, turned her attention to Rumi. And then Rumi came into our lives. Rumi felt her breath catch. Mira's gaze never left hers. You were so careful, she said softly, so afraid of taking up too much space. And I think I recognized that before I even understood what I was recognizing. I saw the way you waited to be invited, the way you apologized for wanting, the way you looked at love like it was something beautiful sitting behind glass. Rumi felt her throat tighten so painfully she almost couldn't swallow. Mira's thumb drifted gently across the back of her hand. I wanted to break the glass for you, she whispered. I wanted to put every soft thing within your reach and tell you that you were allowed to touch it. A tear slipped quietly down Rumi's cheek. You taught me that love doesn't become smaller when it grows. You didn't take anything from us when you joined our life. You gave us more patience, more honesty, more laughter, more reasons to come home. She looked at both of them again. I don't know what I did to deserve being loved by people who see me so clearly and still choose me. I don't know how to explain what it means to wake up beside both of you and feel every day that I am exactly where I was supposed to end up. Her eyes glistened beneath the soft garden light. But I promise I will spend my life trying to be worthy of it, not by being perfect. I know you both would scold me for even trying. We would, Zoe whispered. Mira smiled faintly. But by showing up, by listening, by staying, by making sure you eat and rest and stop pretending you're fine, you're not, by holding your hands through every version of our life, even the versions we haven't imagined yet. She took a shaky breath. I promise to love you in action because that is the language I know best. I promise to learn the languages I don't know yet. I promise to let myself be loved back, even when it scares me. Her voice broke then. I promise that you will never have to wonder if I want this. I want this. I want you, both of you, every day for the rest of my life. Rumi couldn't stop crying now. Zoe wasn't even trying to. Mira looked between them, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "And if I get to be your wife," she whispered, "then I think that will be the greatest honor of my life." The garden was full of sniffles. The officiant himself looked suspiciously emotional when he cleared his throat. "Thank you," he said gently. "Now the rings." Zella perked up immediately. Her little rings. She had been waiting so patiently that the second she heard her cue, her whole face lit up. Stacy gave her a gentle nudge forward, and Zella carefully made her way toward them, carrying the small pillow in both hands. Her steps were slow and wonderfully dramatic, as though she understood the importance of the moment while also believing everyone deserved a chance to admire her dress. Zoe sniffled, smiling through her tears. "You're doing amazing, Zella." Zella beamed even brighter. When she reached them, she proudly lifted the pillow. Resting on the satin cushion were the rings, delicate bands of gold catching the warm light of the late afternoon. Rumi looked down at them, and her heart gave a painful little squeeze. The officiant gently guided them through the exchange, though the moment itself unfolded with the kind of clumsy sweetness that no rehearsal ever could have captured. Zoe's hands were shaking so badly that she started laughing at herself halfway through trying to slide the ring onto Mira's finger. "I'm sorry," she whispered, shaking her head. "My hands are malfunctioning." A soft laugh escaped Mira despite the without waiting for anyone to tell her, and pressed a kiss to the ring. Mira a quiet laugh before reaching for Rumi's hand. Her own fingers weren't much steadier. Rumi watched with a watery smile, her heart aching at the intense concentration written across Mira's face as she carefully guided the ring over her finger. When it finally settled into place, Mira didn't let go right away. She simply held Rumi's hand for one heartbeat longer than she needed to. Then Rumi turned towards Zoe was still crying, her cheeks flushed pink, her smile somehow brighter than ever. As Rumi slipped the ring onto her finger, she leaned in just enough to whisper, "Hi, wife." Zoe made the tiniest broken sound. "You can't say that yet." A smile tugged at Rumi's lips. "I just did." That only made Zoe laugh harder, which immediately dissolved back into tears. Rumi lowered her gaze to their hands. 3 sets of rings, 3 promises. No one left outside. The thought settled warmly in her chest. Good. The officiant smiled, letting the quiet linger for a moment before turning toward Mira first. "Mira," he said, "do you take Zoe and Rumi to be your lawfully wedded wives? Do you promise to love them, honor them, stand beside them, and build a life with them through every season to come?" Mira straightened. Her eyes moved from Zoe to Rumi, glassy and certain. "I do," she said. The words were quiet, but they carried. The officiant turned to Zoe. "And Zoe, do you take Mira and Rumi to be your lawfully wedded wives? Do you promise?" "I do," Zoe said immediately before wincing. "Sorry," she added, making the guests laugh through their tears. "Sorry, yes, I do, very much, absolutely." Then the officiant turned to Rumi. Rumi felt her heart thud. "And Rumi," he said, voice gentle, "do you take Zoe and Mira to be your lawfully wedded wives? Do you promise to love them, honor them, stand beside them, and build a life with them through every season to come?" Rumi looked at them, Zoe crying and smiling, Mira trembling and steady all at once. For one second, every path that had brought them here seemed to pass through her at once. The first night at the apartment, the couch, the aquarium, the hospital room, the notes, the quiet mornings, the proposal, the rings, the impossible conversations, the name Puck, the decision to make their own version of forever. Rumi smiled, tears slipping freely down her face. I do, she said, and she meant it with every broken and healed part of her. The officiant's smile widened. Well then, he said, stepping back, you may now kiss the brides. They all froze. They're gonna do the three-way kiss, I guess, or maybe. I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. Rumi blinked at Zoe. Zoe blinked at Mira. Mira blinked at Rumi. For one perfect, ridiculous sound, none of them moved. Because who was supposed to kiss who first? Hi, Heather. I probably shouldn't be here. I mean, you're getting spoiled, but it's your choice. Oh shit. If Rumi kissed Zoe first, Mira might feel left out for half a second. If Mira kissed Rumi first, Zoe would absolutely make a dramatic noise about it later. If Zoe kissed Mira first, Rumi would probably just stand there crying like a decorative statue. The audience seemed to realize their dilemma at the same time, a soft wave of laughter beginning to move through the garden. Zoe's face lit up. First three-way kiss, she whispered. You've never three-way kissed, kiss girls? Eyes sparkling through tears. Go. Rumi let out a startled laugh. She had somehow forgotten that was an option. Mira took her head, smiling so helplessly that it almost undid Rumi all over again. Then they leaned in. It was not graceful, not really. Their noses bumped. Zoe laughed against them. Mira's hand came up to steady Rumi's waist, and Rumi's fingers curled into Zoe's. Somehow, between the laughter and tears and awkward angle, their mouths found each other in a soft, messy, three-way kiss that tasted like salt and lipstick and joy. Whenever I think of a three-way kiss, I think about the Boy Genius kiss. Because I'm totally not gay. The garden erupted. Applause, cheers, whistles, someone sobbing loudly enough that Rumi had a strong suspicion it was Jinu. Stacy was crying openly. Abby was screaming something unintelligible. Zella was clapping so hard the ring pillow nearly fell out of her hands. Rumi smiled into the kiss. Both is good. She couldn't help it. Her whole body felt too full, like the love had nowhere else to go except out through her trembling hands, her laughter, her tears, her mouth pressed between the two women she had chosen and been chosen by. When they finally pulled apart, none of them moved very far. They lingered there, foreheads nearly touching, their breaths mingling in the small space between them. All three of them were crying. Zoe looked from one to the other, smiling so brightly through her tears that it almost hurt to look at. Beside her, Mira's thumb continued its familiar path along Rumi's waist, while her other hand reached instinctively for Zoe's. Rumi's gaze drifted down to where their hands met, to the rings, to the quiet, shining proof wrapped around each one of their fingers. Then she looked back up at them. My wives, she whispered. Zoe broke immediately. A laugh burst out between fresh sobs as she threw her arms around both of them without a second thought. Mira melted into the embrace just as quickly, lowering her head as her shoulders shook with quiet laughter and tears. Rumi wrapped her arms around them both, holding them as tightly as they were holding her. Around them, their guests erupted into another round of cheers and applause. Above them, the flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, and beyond the arch, the soul sky glowed with soft gold as the sun settled lower on the horizon. For years, the world had tried to tell them that love like theirs needed to be explained, defended, or reshaped until it fit inside someone else's idea of what was allowed. But standing there, wrapped in the arms of her wives, Rumi couldn't imagine anything that had ever felt more honest or more real. My heart. This is how you do it. Finally, someone else does a three-way kiss in their polystory. Woo! You're not insane for doing three-way kisses. I was fully assuming they were just gonna do a three-way kiss from the beginning. I'll be crashing out tomorrow, lol. Tomorrow's the first day off where I'll be home, so I shall cry. I mean, read tomorrow. TC is going to be my Listen, I reread the first few chapters of TC, and they are great as a comfort read. Like, and then it gets angsty and stuff, whatever. But yeah. Wait, does Rumi still doesn't know how to swim? I don't know. We haven't touched on that since the pool episode, so. The cake was almost too pretty to cut. Almost. I was randomly thinking about that's so real though. Almost. It stood in 3 soft tiers, frosted in blue ivory, with the delicate sugar flowers trailing down one side like blossoms caught in the middle of falling. Thin bands of gold circled each layer, subtle enough that they only shimmered whenever the light caught them just right, and perched at the very top were 3 tiny pearl initials. RZM. Rumi found herself staring at it for a long moment. The cake knife resting lightly in her hand as she became unexpectedly emotional over frosting. Zoe leaned closer, grinning. You're thinking too hard about cake. It's pretty. It is, Mira agreed, standing on Rumi's other side. But we are supposed to eat it. Zoe slipped one arm around Rumi's waist before reaching for Mira with the other, tugging them both a little closer as the photographer lifted her camera. Okay, wives, Zoe announced brightly. Cake time! Rumi's chest still did something completely ridiculous every single time Zoe said that. Wives. She wasn't sure she'd ever get used to hearing it. From a few steps away, the photographer smiled. All life. That sounded like it should have been simple. It wasn't. Rumi placed her hands on the handle first. Then Mira slid over hers, steady and warm. And then Zoe squeezed hers on top with absolutely no regard for proper positioning. Mira looked down. Zoe? What? Your hand is on the blade. Zoe followed her gaze. Oh! Rumi couldn't help laughing. Please don't bleed on our wedding cake. Zoe looked delightfully offended. Wow, so demanding already. You've been married for 20 minutes, Mira reminded her. And I'm thriving. After a bit of rearranging and considerably more time spent listening to Zoe insist she had excellent knife instincts, they finally managed to cut into the bottom tier together. The guests burst into applause as the knife slid cleanly through the frosting, and Rumi found herself laughing again, her cheeks beginning to ache from smiling so much throughout the day. Mira, naturally, took charge of plating the first slice, carefully lifting it onto a plate and making sure it stayed perfectly intact. Zoe, meanwhile, hovered beside her with an expression that immediately made Rumi suspicious. She picked up a small piece of cake between her fingers and smiled with exaggerated sweetness. Rumi instinctively took one careful step backward. Zoe? What? Zoe asked innocently, still wearing that smile. It's tradition. No, Rumi corrected. Feeding cake is tradition. This, Zoe replied with complete confidence, is a creative interpretation. Mira raised a finger toward her. Zoe? Zoe's grin only widened. She moved far too for either of them to react, triumphantly swiping frosting across Mira's cheek with a delighted little laugh before immediately spinning toward Rumi and dabbing another smear across her face. Rumi gasped. The guests erupted. The camera flashed. For a full second, Rumi just stood there, stunned, frosting cool and sugary against her cheek and the corner of her mouth. Mira was equally frozen beside her. One eye narrowed, the icing streaked beautifully across her otherwise perfect makeup. Zoe, meanwhile, looked absolutely delighted with herself. She pointed between them, laughing so hard she could barely stand. Oh my god, you both look so cute! Rumi slowly touched her cheek, stared at the frosting on her fingers, then looked at Zoe. Mira did the same. Zoe's laughter faltered. Oh, she said as Rumi smiled. Mira smiled too, which was somehow worse, and Zoe took one tiny step back. Wait. Rumi reached down and picked up another piece of cake. Mira followed suit. Zoe lifted both hands defensively. Okay, hold on. I am the bride. You cannot attack the bride. We are also the brides, Mira replied calmly. Rumi stepped closer, her smile growing. You started it. The second the words left her mouth, Zoe squealed and turned to run, but she barely made it 2 steps before Mira caught her around the waist and pulled her back. Traitor! Zoe laughed, twisting around in her arms. My makeup suffered, Mira said simply, as if that explained everything. Rumi approached from the front, cake in hand. Zoe shook her head, already laughing so hard tears were beginning to gather in the corners of her eyes. Rumi, baby, light of my life, sweetest wife. Rumi paused for only a second. Too late. She gently smeared frosting across Zoe's cheek. Mira followed with a much more precise streak across her nose, looking far too pleased with herself. The guests cheered even louder. The photographer kept snapping photos, capturing Zoe's open mouthed laughter, Mira's smug satisfaction, and Rumi smiling so hard her eyes had nearly disappeared. Zoe wiped frosting from her nose with one finger and licked it off. Then she beamed. Worth it. They're so cute. I'm just going to keep saying that. Make Gangle and Zubul. Wait, what? Make Gangle and Zubul kiss. Hello? Gangle and Zubul? Who are Gangle and Zubul? I am confusion. Someone joined. Named that. Oh. What? I guess I don't see everyone who joins. I don't know. Gangle and Zubul from the Amazing. I haven't seen the Amazing Digital Circus. I've had it recommended to me countless times, but I haven't seen it. Also, let me plug my phone before it dies again. Oh, Sam. Yeah, it's late for you. Listen, bedtime story. Lay in bed. Let this play over. just chillax. Just fall asleep. Yeah, it's just pretty late. Sleep. Bro, Sam commented on my chapter. I'm not surprised. I haven't read it yet. I'm gonna read it sometime. I'm just busy with shit right now. And yeah, like literally when I'm like commuting, I am sleeping. When I'm not sleeping, I'm like thinking about something or like making a TikTok or sound designing, like or cooking. I live at my job. Real. Listen, it's gonna be worth it. It's gonna be worth it because I have a reading on Sunday, and then after that I can lock into other things. I have a reading on Sunday where for a second I was like, wait, am I gonna get to stage kiss a girl? And then we decided on like a more like cheek to cheek kiss instead of a lip kiss because it's like a staged reading. It's not like an actual. Hello, YouTube. Sorry about that. Hello. Oh, God. Hey, YouTube, sorry. My microphone disconnected. But I'm back. I want to stop working retail, but no one in my industry will hire me. No. What's your industry? I wanna say, saying during a GTC read there was talk about a sci-fi version that was tossed around. A sci-fi version of Rose's fic? The sci-fi Huntrix fanfic, was that done? Wait. What do you mean? What do you mean? Sci-fi version of GTC or Roses? Maybe I'm just confusing words. I was sci-fi. Yeah. Yeah, there is a sci-fi one you're working on. That's like supposed to be super, super sad that we talked about. Yeah, a few months back. Yeah, that was a while ago. Are you still working on it? What's the ETA? What's the ETA? Is every author still involved with that? Because I remember there were a couple of authors involved. Like there was you and Cactus. I don't know the other ones, but there were multiple, right? That's what's the ETA? What's the ETA? Hello again. Yeah. That was the reason why. Me and Cactus right now, basically. I see. I see. But she's helping me with the breaks. I'm not surprised. I really want to write like little one shots. I do not have the creative writing energy to write like long fics, but I want to write one shots. I've like never published fics, but I'm finishing act 1 of my biker fic. Naturally. I just read the like warnings in the author note for the new chapter, and it's like transphobia, blah 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 blah. Like this list of warnings, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. I'm gonna get to it. I promise. I promise. Okay, let's go back. I'm so proud of you, loser. Chinu practically wailed the words over the music as he grabbed Rumi by the shoulders and shook her like she was a mouth vending machine. Rumi burst into laughter, hands flying up to hold onto his arms so her head wouldn't actually rattle off. You can't call me a loser anymore, she said, raising her voice over the song pulsing through the reception hall. I'm married now. That cancels it out. Chinu sniffed dramatically, his eyes already glossy. No, it doesn't. It absolutely does. You can be a married loser. Rumi laughed harder. That feels disrespectful. It's affectionate. His face crumpled suddenly, all the joking wobbling under the force of what he was actually feeling. I just mean, look at you. Rumi's laughter softened. Chinu's hands were still on her shoulders, but his grip has gentled now, thumbs pressing once like he needed to make sure she was really there in front of him. His eyes moved over her dress, her hair, the rings on her fingers, and the smile he had watched her grow into over the years. I know, he said, voice thick. You grew up from that little, awkward, emotionally damaged teen. Rumi's mouth trembled despite herself. Wow, beautiful speech so far. Shut up, I'm emotional. Chinu wiped at his cheek with the heel of his hand. And now look at you. Married, happy, still a loser in my heart, but like a healed loser. Rumi let out a wet laugh, but her eyes had already started burning because he had been there before Zoe, before Mira, before Rumi had any idea what home could feel like when it wasn't something she had to earn. Chinu had been there when she was awkward and guarded and sharp in all the wrong places, when she flinched from kindness and pretended she didn't, when she wanted love so badly it embarrassed her. He had loved her then too, not perfectly, not always elegantly, but loyally, loudly, like her staying alive and showing up mattered to him. Rumi reached for him before the tears could fall. Jinu came immediately, wrapping his arms around her so tightly she let out a small sound against his shoulder. I love you, she whispered. Jinu squeezed her harder. I love you too, Rumi. He choked out. I love them so bad. While they just stood there in the middle of the reception, hugging as the music played around them and people laughed and danced only a few feet away. Rumi could feel Jinu's shoulders shaking. She closed her eyes and held on, suddenly hit by the thought that life had carried them so far from where they started. And somehow he was still here. When she finally pulled back, she wiped quickly beneath one eye, careful not to ruin whatever makeup had survived the cake incident. Chinu, she said softly, I have to tell you something. His expression shifted immediately. Tell me what? Rumi looked down at the rings on her hand, thumb brushing over them once. She had been trying not to think about this too hard today. The wedding had been too beautiful, too full, too bright, but the future was still waiting after the flowers came down and the music stopped. I'm moving to Cali soon, she said. Jinu blinked. Rumi swallowed, forcing herself to keep going before her voice could break. So you have to promise me that you'll visit me every chance you get, okay? For 1 second, Jinu just stared at her. Then he laughed like she had said something genuinely ridiculous. Rumi frowned through the ache in her chest. What? Jinu's smile spread slowly, brighter and softer all at once. What makes you think I'm not coming with you? Rumi froze. The music seemed to blur behind him. You. Her voice caught. What? Jinu shrugged like it was obvious, like he hadn't just punched a hole straight through one of her biggest fears. I'm coming with you. Rumi stared at him, trying to process the words. You are? Yeah. To California? No, Rumi, to the moon. He rolled his eyes, but his own tears were back. Yes, to California. Rumi made a small, broken sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite a sob. You know what? I'm gonna keep the mic over here. I'm gonna keep the mic over here because I am so sick to like restart it over and over and over again. Okay. So I'm actually gonna get this even closer to me. Oh shit, I forgot that. I forgot that this is over here. Okay. Yeah, like over here. Yeah. Cool, 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 cool. Wait, without Abby, you're leaving him here? Yeah. Please, he's coming with me. Duh. Rumi blinked. He is? Obviously. Just like I'm not leaving you behind, he's not leaving Mira behind. Rumi stared at him for a beat. Then understanding settled over her, warm and slow. Oh, Jinu gave her a look. Yeah. Oh. Rumi's lips parted into a smile. Of course. Besides, Jinu added, wiping his face again, California has beaches, better weather, and probably a lot of people who need my personality. Rumi laughed. That's one way to put it. Jinu smiled at her, and for once, it wasn't teasing. We're coming, he said. Not because you need babysitting, not because you can't do it without us, but because you're family. And families move around sometimes. They stretch, they make new homes. Rumi's face crumpled again. Jinu groaned. No, don't do that. I just fixed my face. You made me cry. You cry at everything. I do not. Rumi smiled through her tears. So you're really coming? I'm really coming. And Abby? And Abby. Rumi breathed in shakily. The future still felt terrifying. California, a new home, a new language of streets and routines and paperwork, distance from Celine, even if Celine had promised she wouldn't disappear from her life, starting over in a place that wasn't theirs yet. But now, suddenly, the future had familiar voices in it. Jinu complaining in her kitchen, Abby annoying Mira on purpose, Zoe dragging everyone to some beach at sunset, Mira pretending not to be relieved while feeding them all. Rumi closed her eyes for a second and let that image settle. When she opened them, Jinu was watching her. You okay? He asked. Rumi nodded, smiling softly. Yeah, she said. I think I am. Jinu's grin returned, though his eyes stayed wet. Good. Because now that we've had our emotional moment, I need to tell you that your three-way kiss was incredibly chaotic. Rumi groaned, covering her face. It was our first time doing that. That was obvious. Jinu! I'm just saying that nose collision was visible from row 3. Rumi shoved his shoulder, laughing. He laughed too, catching her hand before she could pull away and squeezing it once. Then, softer, he said, I'm proud of you. Rumi looked at him. No loser this time. No joke tucked immediately after. Just the truth. Her throat tightened again, but she managed to smile. Thank you. Jinu squeezed her hand once more before letting go. Now, come on, he said, nodding toward the dance floor where Zoe was trying to drag Mira into what looked like a very questionable group dance. Your wives are embarrassing themselves without you. Rumi glanced over. Zoe was waving both arms at her dramatically while Mira stood beside her with the exhausted expression of someone deeply in love and deeply resigned. Rumi laughed. Jinu nudged her forward. And as she walked back toward them, dress brushing the floor, rings warm on her fingers, her best friend at her side and her wives waiting for her under the soft glow of the reception lights, Rumi felt the fear of leaving loosen just a little more. Not gone, but lighter. Because maybe home was not one place after all. Maybe it was the people who kept choosing to come with her. What's that song? Home. A house is not a. No, that's different though. That's a sad song. Is there like a cute song that's like go fund me for a new mic? Don't worry, I have a mic over there. I have a mic over there. Um, I already had my setup here and I was too lazy to change it right now. But I do have a mic over there and I'm really excited to use it for streams. It's an XLR mic and I sent it to get it fixed and now it's fixed and it sounds so good. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I'm the worst person to ask about writer's block. I didn't update for 8 months. That's crazy. I didn't notice it was 8 months. Well, actually, it's right there. It's this microphone is covering it. Give me a second. It's right there. See? It's a Rode. It's a Rode NT1. And I really like it. And I was having a lot of problems with it. But then I was so brave and sent it to get it fixed. And now it's fixed. So it sounds really good, actually. Yay. I'm so excited to do more audiobook auditions and voiceover auditions with it. Oh, God, Rumi is so me. Rumi didn't know how long she had been sitting in her little home office, staring at her screen until the words started to blur at the edges. Long enough for the California light outside the window to shift from bright afternoon gold into something softer and warmer. Long enough for her tea to go cold beside her. Long enough for her legs to go stiff beneath the desk and for her shoulders to start complaining every time she moved. But she had been writing, actually writing. Motivation had hit her so suddenly after her shower that she'd barely managed to dry her hair before sitting down at her desk. Oh, the book that she's writing right now is gonna be Two's Company. Watch it, watch it, watch it happen. A decomposing shower, as Zoe liked to call them, the kind where Rumi stood under the hot water until she felt less like a person and more like something slowly being rehydrated back into existence. And apparently it had worked because the words had come, line after line, scene after scene, her fingers moving over the keyboard almost faster than her mind could keep up. It was the kind of flow she had learned not to question too much. If she looked directly at it, it might disappear. So she didn't. She wrote until the real world thinned around her, until the house went quiet, until a knock at the door startled her so badly her fingers froze mid sentence. The door cracked open a second later, and Zoe peeked in. She was dressed in one of her oversized t shirts and a pair of soft shorts, hair loose around her face, looking like she had already fully committed to a cozy night in. The sight alone made something in Rumi unclench. Zoe smiled. "Dinner's ready," she said. "Mira wants you down." Rumi blinked at her, then glanced toward the clock on her screen. "Oh." Zoe's smile widened. "Yeah. Oh." Rumi leaned back in her chair and stretched, arms lifting above her head as her spine gave a deeply concerning little pop. A yawn slipped out before she could stop it. "Okay," she murmured. Zoe's eyes softened. "You look like you crawled out of a writing cave." "Out of a writing cave?" "I kind of did." "Successful cave?" Rumi looked back at the screen, at the open document filled with words that hadn't existed this morning. Her mouth curved. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." Zoe's smile brightened in that immediate, proud way that still made Rumi feel shy after all these years. "Good. Come eat before Mira starts threatening to bring the food to you and you feed you herself. Ugh. Come eat before Mira starts threatening to bring the food to you and feed you herself." Rumi closed her laptop enough to put it to sleep, then stood, rubbing at one shoulder as she followed Zoe out of the office and down the stairs. The house smelled incredible. Something rich and savory drifted up from the kitchen. Warm sesame oil, garlic, soy sauce, and gochugaru, all layered together. Rumi's stomach realized it had been ignored for several hours. The script to K-pop Demon Hunters, that's funny. Zoe glanced back at her as they reached the bottom of the stairs. "You forgot to eat lunch, didn't you?" Rumi opened her mouth. Zoe pointed at her. "Don't lie to me. I'm your wife." Rumi closed her mouth. Zoe nodded, satisfied. "That's what I thought." "I had tea." "Tea is not lunch." "It had honey." "Rumi, I'm just providing facts." Zoe shook her head, but she was smiling as they entered the kitchen. Mira stood at the counter, plating food with the kind of focus she usually reserved for fittings, deadlines, and fixing Zoe's destroyed sweaters. She had changed out of her work clothes, wearing a loose, dark shirt and comfortable pants now, her hair twisted up with a clip and a few strands falling free around her face. Rumi slowed for a second just to look at her. The kitchen light made everything feel warmer. The wood cabinets, the steam rising from the plates, Mira's hands moving carefully as she arranged the food, the quiet, domestic rhythm of it all. For some reason, it still hit Rumi sometimes. This was her life. Coming downstairs after writing too long, Zoe in an oversized shirt waiting at the door, Mira plating dinner in their kitchen. Wait, oh yeah, the cat somewhere nearby, probably plotting a movie waiting to be half watched because one of them would start talking halfway through. Rumi stepped up behind Mira and wrapped her arms around her waist. Mira didn't startle. She only hummed, leaning back into her slightly. There you are. Rumi rested her chin on Mira's shoulder, looking down at the food. That smells really good. It's duck gaibi, Mira said, sliding some of the spicy stir fried chicken, cabbage, rice cakes, and sweet potato onto a plate. And rice. And I made cucumber muchim because Zoe said we needed something crunchy. Zoe appeared beside them, already grabbing chopsticks. Because we did! Mira glanced at her. You said it like the meal would emotionally feel without crunch. It would have! Rumi laughed softly against Mira's shoulder. Mira turned her head slightly, pressing a quick kiss to Rumi's temple. Did you eat lunch? Rumi went still. Zoe immediately made a victorious sound. See? Wife interrogation! Rumi sighed. I had tea. Mira paused. With honey, Rumi added weakly. Mira's silence was devastating. Zoe leaned against the counter, grinning. Rumi pressed her face into Mira's shoulder. I was writing. That is not an excuse. It's a reason. It's a bad one. I know. Mira reached back and lightly pinched Rumi's side, making her squirm. Sit down before I start being annoying. You're already being annoying. I can get worse. She can, Zoe said brightly. Rumi kissed Mira's shoulder before letting go, then helped carry the plates to the living room while Zoe grabbed drinks and napkins. They didn't bother with the dining table tonight. Somehow, couch dinners had become a ritual over the years, especially on nights when everyone was tired and the only real plan was food, movie, and not moving again until absolutely necessary. Mira settled on one end of the couch, Rumi in the middle, Zoe immediately curling into her other side like she had been assigned seating since birth. The coffee table filled quickly with plates, bowls of rice, chopsticks, cucumber muchim, and a small dish of kimchi Mira had insisted on bringing out, even though Zoe claimed there were already enough side quests. Zoe turned on the TV and scrolled through seriousness. No sad movies, Mira said immediately. Zoe gasped. I wasn't going to. You hovered over one with a rainy window and a woman staring into the distance. That could be a comedy. It was called The Last Letter. Rumi nodded solemnly. That does not sound silly. Zoe clicked away from it. Fine. No emotional devastation tonight. Thank you. They settled on something familiar and light. A movie they had all seen enough times that it didn't matter if they missed parts of it. The opening music played softly as they began eating, the room filling with the comfortable quiet of people too hungry to talk for a few minutes. Rumi took her first bite and almost groaned. The spice hit first, warm and smoky, followed by the sweetness of the cabbage and the chew of the rice cake. It tasted like home in that specific way Mira's cooking always did, like care made edible. Zoe watched her reaction and grinned. Good? Rumi nodded immediately. Very. Mira nodded pleased, though she hid it by taking another bite of her own food. For a while, they ate with the movie playing in the background, Zoe occasionally commenting on characters' outfits, Mira correcting the logic of a scene no one had asked her to analyze, and Rumi leaning between them, warm and tired, and slowly returning to her body after being stuck in her head all day. Eventually, Mira glanced at her. You're making a new book? Rumi looked over, mouth full, then nodded as she finished chewing. You were up there for a long time, Mira added. Rumi smiled, looking down at her bowl as sudden shyness crept up her neck. Yeah. Yeah, she said. It's something I've wanted to write for a long time now. Zoe immediately nudged her shoulder with hers. What's it about? Rumi's fingers tightened slightly around her chopsticks. The question should have been easy. She had answered it in her own mind a dozen times already, maybe more. But saying it out loud to them made it feel different, more real, more exposed. Her cheeks warmed. It's about. She paused, glancing down at her food. Us. I said it. I said it. She's writing Two's company. Listen, we love something meta. We love meta. The room seemed to soften around the word. Mira's eyes lifted to hers, a small smile already forming. Really now? Zoe perked up so fast her knee knocked into Rumi's. Really? Rumi let out a nervous little laugh. Yeah, well, fully inspired by us. I'm going to use different characters and different circumstances, obviously. It won't be like a direct retelling. Zoe was staring at her with her whole face open. Mira's gaze had gone warm and quiet. Rumi looked between them, suddenly feeling like she was 20 again, admitting something tender and waiting to see if it was too much. But yeah, she said softly, it's about three people who find each other, I guess, and how love doesn't have to fit the shape other people expect, and how sometimes home is built really slowly with a lot of fear and bad timing and people who refuse to give up on each other. Zoe's expression crumpled. Oh, I love that, she said immediately. Rumi's smile trembled. You haven't read it yet. I know, and I already love it. Mira reached over and brushed her thumb lightly against Rumi's wrist. I'm definitely reading it. You don't have to. Mira gave her a look. Rumi smiled. Okay, you have to. You do have to. Exactly. Zoe leaned closer, resting her cheek briefly against Rumi's shoulder. Are we hot in it? Rumi snorted. Zoe? What? Important question. Mira, completely serious, said, they better be. Rumi laughed, some of her nerves easing. They are very hot. Zoe nodded, satisfied. Good. Accurate. And emotionally complicated. Also accurate. And kind of stupid sometimes. Mira pointed her chopsticks at her. That part is about Zoe. Zoe gasped. Excuse me? Rumi smiled into her bowl. It's about all of us. Zoe considered that, then nodded. Fair. They kept eating, but something had changed. Not awkwardly, just gently. The movie continued in the background, characters moving across the scene, but Rumi could feel Zoe's attention still tucked around her. Mira's too. Not pressing, not demanding more. Just there. Give me a second while I. Okay. After a while, Zoe spoke again. What are you going to call it? Rumi stilled. She had known that question was coming eventually. Still, her stomach fluttered. She stared down at her food for a moment, watching the steam curl up from the rice. The title had been sitting in the document since before she wrote the first line, rough and imperfect, but stubborn. She hadn't been able to shake it. It's still a working title, Rumi said. Zoe shifted closer, interested. Mira waited quietly. Rumi leaned back into the couch, the bowl balanced carefully in her hands as she stared down at it for a moment, suddenly feeling far from embarrassed by the weight of the idea that she expected. What do you think of, she started, hesitating before finally saying it. Three's a crowd until it isn't? For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mira smiled. Not a big or dramatic smile, but something softer, something immediate and genuine that made Rumi's chest loosen before she even heard the answer. Yeah, Mira said quietly. I like that. Zoe's grin came slower, spreading across her face as the title settled in. Three's a crowd until it isn't, she repeated, and hearing the words leave her mouth made something in Rumi's chest tighten. Zoe leaned her head back onto Rumi's shoulder, smiling to herself. Has a nice ring to it. Mira hummed thoughtfully. Very subtle. It is subtle. It has the word three in it. Subtle to people who can't count. Rumi laughed, shaking her head as Zoe reached across her to lightly poke Mira's arm. Don't bully our wife's title. I said I liked it. You said it with commentary. That is how I like things. Rumi smiled down at her bowl, warmth spreading through her chest so steadily that it almost ached. Their wife's title. Their story, but not exactly. Their love transformed into something else, something fictional enough to protect the parts that belonged only to them, but honest enough to carry the heart of what they had built together. For a moment, Rumi thought about the younger version of herself sitting in their apartment years ago, unsure if she was even allowed to eat on the couch with them, unsure if she was allowed to want something as simple as belonging, unsure if love could truly make room with her without asking her to take something away from someone else. She wished she could tell that girl about this room, about Zoe sitting beside her in soft shorts, grinning over a movie, about Mira pretending she wasn't emotional while quietly making sure both of them had enough food, about the cats downstairs, the paintings covering the walls, the rings resting on their hands, and the fact that one day Rumi would write a love story inspired by all of it, because somehow she had finally lived one worth telling. Zoe's fingers slipped between hers, and only a second later, Mira reached over and took her other hand, their familiar warmth grounding her before she even realized she needed it. Rumi looked up. Both of them were watching her. What? She asked softly. Zoe smiled. You got quiet. Mira's thumb brushed gently over her knuckles, thinking too loudly again. Rumi laughed under her breath. Maybe. Good thoughts? Zoe asked. Rumi looked at them, at her wives, at the life around her. Then she nodded. Yeah, she said. Good thoughts. Zoe squeezed her hand. Mira lifted Rumi's knuckles to her mouth and kissed them once before letting their joined hands settle back between them. The movie played on, mostly ignored. Dinner cooled slowly on the coffee table, and Rumi sat there between the two women who had become the beginning and middle and center of so many of her stories, smiling to herself as the title stayed warm in her chest. Three's a crown. Let me say that. Three's a crowd until it isn't. Maybe it wasn't perfect yet. Maybe it would change. But for now, it felt right. The end and scene. Everyone, applaud for Toss. That's the end of Two's Company, but they want a crowd. Applause, 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 applause. Dang, and that's it. Wow. Ah, thank you, Toss. Yeah. Thank you, Toss. Yay. That's so crazy. Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah. Great job, Toss. God roomies. Yeah. Well, that's Two's Company, but they want a crowd. Thank you for writing the story, Toss. I wouldn't be here without it. Yeah. The way like a lot of people wouldn't be here without it. Like the OG man. You're the realist. What are we supposed to do now? I'll keep living. I'll keep living. Wait. Oh shoot. I'm just gonna be cheesy and make a tweet. I'm gonna be real cheesy. Dang, girl. Jaime is almost done with JTC 29. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. TC was my intro to fanfics. Yeah. Girl. Oh, Two's Company. So special to me. And scene. I'm gonna do like a little. Where's the? Do we have like a little crying? Yeah. Now 3 is a crowd until it needs to be written. 3 is a crowd until it isn't. Is just too certain. Two's company. But you know what? We don't know. There might be some side fix or something like that. You never know. You never know. Is Toss still here? I think she was. If Toss, or if you're still here, I hope you heard everyone being super nice in the comments, in the chat. I keep saying comments instead of chat. TikTok of her crashing out over Mira telling Zoe she loved her in English got me. That's one of my favorite moments. That's one of my favorite moments. I love that so much. I was like losing my mind. I love them so bad. We just finished reading. Two's Company was the reason I met Rose. 3 weeks until my stream anniversary. Listen, the 44th chapter came out on the 11th month anniversary of me streaming. Oh, it was like TC chapter 7 or something is when I started lurking. You started lurking on my TikTok? Because I started making TikToks at like chapter like 14. Something like that. Hi, Sky. We just finished. Yeah. Yes, or was it later? What was your first TikTok? Because my first ever was that like stupid TikTok of me being like, "Oh, this is just a silly movie that I'll watch." Like clicks on the remote and then like gets absorbed in the world of fanfiction. That was my first ever TikTok about polytrix, very like specifically. That was my first one. Tomato. Well, damn. I should like count the number of words of Two's Company that I've read on stream because it's a lot. I started reading on chapter 20. No, yeah, chapter 23. Didn't read chapter 24 because it was NSFW and I wasn't brave yet. Read the rest of it. So I need to make a calculation. I don't think I drew the connection to it being you yet, but your lives kept showing up. Yeah. This is over because now what am I supposed to do? I binged the first 20 chapters after seeing Artie's life for the first time. Yeah, a lot of people and like would like leave comments about it and fast because it took me like a few. I'm Artie's. Yeah, Dane was here since stream 1. Dane was here since stream 1, and I remembered me being like, "Wait, how do you spell your name? How do you pronounce your name?" I think I joined at like TC chapter 20. Yeah, my first one was 23 that I read. I was reading at work and that was difficult with the X. Oh. Artie, you're still live? Yeah, we just finished. Which was like 2 a.m. my time. Yeah. 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 Reef. Hey, girl. I was flustered during that one selfic. I was flustered during that streamer Zoe fic. That was when I was very flustered. And then I grew up. Oh, yeah. Again, would you guys like to be here while I make the calculation of how many words of Two's Company I've read? Okay. So we start chapter 23. Let's do this. I'm going to do this on stream because I'm curious now. I'm going to like procrastinate a little and then I will end stream and then I will actually do work. Yay. Okay, let's see. Will it let me do? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to need it like as a separate tab over here. Yes. Yes. Let's see. Calculator over here. And let's go to chapter 23. Yeah. 7,667. Okay, 7,667. We're skipping next chapter because I did not read that one. A new edition. 7,700. Wait. 7,780 plus next chapter. 11,810 plus. This is gonna take a while. Y'all can talk in the chat or you can leave. This is just me being silly. 3,946, a shorter one. Next chapter. 7,030. Also, I uploaded Google Chrome extension that lets me see the words per chapter. Yeah, we did that. Symptoms of change 29. 8,158 plus. We haven't reached 100,000 yet. 9,278. Rings and new beginnings. Shout out. Too much but not enough. 8,367. These were very short. A Breath of Air, chapter 32. 17,950. Next chapter. Lavender Has Always Been Lovely, part 1. 10,271. Next chapter. Mended Bonds, part 2. This is still during their breakup era. 20,819. Yeah, we're getting up in the 20K. We surpassed 100K. Pins, Needles, and Helping Hands. 23,887. Next chapter. New Rings and Old Beginnings. 21,496. Fun in the Sun, 15,991. And I know what the next one is. Sweet Times and Sweeter Taste. All right. Okay. 42,000. This is the 42,000 one. 42,260. I know y'all are talking in the chat. Oh, are you proud of me, Ma? 38,286. And this one I was like, I need to split these into 2 because I'm dying. Way in Over Your Head, part 1. 25,341. This is crazy. Daddy's Girl, part 2. 29,018. Rose, no cuss. Thanks for fanfic. I met you unlike everyone else. I do still plan to finish Learning to Love, by the way, for those who care. I'm working on chapter 23 right now. Yeah. Girl, I was 22 and now I'm turning 24. Okay. We did Daddy's Girl. Slipping Through Her Fingers, 39,004. 39,004. Next chapter. Hope still lies in tomorrow. 36,098. Fuck. Wait, fuck. I messed it up. Fuck. No. Did I do 3? Fuck, no. I'm turning 29 this year. Dang. Wait, no, I fucked it up. No, girl, no. Fuck. No, 36. Wait, did I fuck it up? I fucked it up. Start over. This is not the most useful calculator. Can I also say that? What did you do? I like accidentally, instead of clicking like 0, I clicked the plus sign, and I don't know where I clicked the plus sign. So I wish I had like a calculator. Like I used to have a calculator. Basic calculator. Does this one let me just type it out? You know what? We're gonna go. And you can go right now. This is literally me killing time. Okay. 23,640 plus 23,640 plus. This is epilogue one last time. Familiar faces and same places. 37,000. Hey. 37,396 plus previous chapter. Hope still lies in tomorrow. Damn, I really had like 2 chapters left and I fucked it up. 36,094. Okay, I'll try to be faster. Slipping through her fingers. 39,004. Daddy's girl. 29,018. Way in over your head. 25,341. Are you proud of me, Ma? 38,286. Sweet times and sweeter tastes. 42,260. Oh, 42,260. Didn't write. Okay. Fun in the Sun. 15,991 plus New Rings and Old Beginnings. Damn. 21,496. Pins, Needles, and Helping Hands. 23,887. I think I'm going. Mended Bonds. 20,800. 819. You know what I could be doing? I could be sleeping and possibly going to the Spring Awakening open call tomorrow, but I'm not doing that. Girl, there was over 1,000 people today. I am not getting chosen. Like, it's okay. I am not that delulu. 10,271. A Breath of Air. 17,950. Too much but not enough. 8,367. Rings and New Beginnings. 9,278. Symptoms of change, 800 and 8,158. Not 800. Not all things can be fixed. 1,030 chapters, bro. Aftermath. Ha ha ha. 3,946. We're over 400K. This is crazy. Who's going to keep you warm out in the cold? 11,110. Did I skip a few the last time I was doing this? I feel like it's taking me longer. A new addition? I might have, low-key. I don't know. 8,800 and 7,780. Take your mind off things. Did not read this one. And out of your shell. This was my first one. 7,667. In your favor, I can English. That is 445,493 words read of Two's company. Well, give me a fucking second. Wowza. Artie can do math. I can't do math. It's just harder with the online calculator, okay? And I have to keep back and forth between. Actually really good at math, excuse me. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Oh, not this, not this. So how many words? I can like calculate the percentage of how much. It's 612,543 words in total. So I can calculate how much of this like the percentage of it. 612 543. It's 72.73%. 72.73%. Cute. I like math, actually. I actually really like math. Fun fact about me. That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, how much of it was smart? For this one, we had the 40K, but not all of that was smut. Like, out of all of this, I'm gonna estimate that maybe, like, because not all of that was smut. I'm gonna say, like, maybe 40K of that was smut. I'm gonna be generous and be 50K. Probably, yeah, 40, 50K if I'm generous. Made the calculation. And I have read 445,493 words of Two's company in the time I've been streaming. 72.7. Cute. I'm so smart, guys. Girls is now like 80 something thousand words. Hell yes. What books is that? Is that word count more than? How much was the Lord of the Rings franchise again? We've been through this. We've been through the Lord of the Rings conversation before. That's longer than the entire Hunger Games trilogy. Lord of the Rings is 650. Okay, okay. Okay. Hunger Games total word count. I need my water. I realize. Trilogy. The three books in total is 301,583. So maybe like all the Hunger Games books is about how much I've read. I need more publishing strategies. Girl. Toss in here. Is Toss still here? I don't know. Toss still seems to be here, but maybe maybe she fell asleep. That happens. That happens. That's fine. Okay, I think I'm gonna. It's 11 p.m. guys. I need to end the stream. I need to end the stream and submit for auditions. And be an adult. Wait, just one look is at 66,821 words. I could write a few extra sentences. 67,000. Okay, Ross. Okay, YouTube. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. Bye bye. I'm gonna go. Bye bye. Thanks for being here, and see you. See you when the new GTC comes out. I guess that will be fun. I should. You know what I'm gonna do now? You know what I'm gonna do now? I'm gonna be an adult and do my submissions for the audition that I want to submit for, and then I'm gonna react to the audio. Not upload it yet, but I'm gonna film a reaction to it. Giggle kicking my feet. Bye, YouTube.